afternoon meeting.
The meeting will come to order. We are now holding our regularly scheduled meeting held Tuesday, March 3rd, 2015, 9 o'clock in the morning. At this time, I'd like to call on Deputy Teddy Floyd with the Indian River County Sheriff's Department to give the invocation. Teddy, welcome. Please rise.
Let us bow our head. Father, we thank you. We thank you for this great day. We thank you for our commissioners. We thank you for law enforcement all over the land. We thank you for our great community in the River County, God. We ask that you give them wisdom and understanding, God. Let us make the right decision. And God, when it's all over, we'll give you the praise. Let us say amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join me in the pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. At this time, are there any additions or modifications to the agenda? There's two that I'm aware of, and one is the item 14A1, which is the abandonment of artesian well plugging. And then we're going to pull 13B1, from the County Attorney's Matters, a quick claim deed for Blue Cypress Lakes Stilt House. Is there any other modifications?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think we have item 12A, which is departmental matters for the consideration for economic development strategic planning, and we are having a presentation by the ADDI agency. I believe it would be advisable to couple that up.
So we'll move that to 12A1 to be actually 5A2. Close enough?
Recommendation.
Very well. Anybody else? Anything else? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
To approve as amended.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien with a second from Commissioner Flesher to approve the orders of the day. If there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us to proclamations and presentations. Mr. Bowling, we'll start with you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Stan Bowling, Community Development Director. I'd like to just give a little bit of context for the economic positioning presentation the consultant will do in just a moment. This is a target industry and action plan positioning report. And a little bit of background how it started. In November of 2013, the board approved an Economic Development Council initiative, and that was a request to authorize an RFP to develop economic positioning plan. And the board at that time directed staff and the chamber to develop the scope and to coordinate the project. And then in April of 2014, the board approved the scope and moving forward with the RFP. Then last June in 2014, the board approved the RFP selection committee number one ranked firm. That was 80 Advantage with an $80,000 budget for phase one services. And that's what we're under contract with the consultant. And that's to develop a positioning plan with recommended actions. And there are a number of steps and tasks laid out in the scope, and including collection of data, conducting surveys, public meetings, site visits, analysis, coming up with a positioning statement and an action plan with recommended actions to move economic development forward. Phase two was also discussed in the scope. That would be a future phase, and it would involve the next step, really involving branding and marketing. That was discussed in 2014, as well as who would be responsible for that and the possibility of the chamber and the private sector handling that particular aspect. From July of 2014 to the present, 80 Advantage has conducted the phase one services, and those services are almost complete. There's today's presentation, whatever input or feedback you all give on the report, and then a revised report, and that'll be the final product for phase one. The next steps really at this point is for the board to hear the consultant presentation and to provide input today. We're also recommending that you all accept the positioning plan with any changes or actions today, and that could include an acknowledgement that we have another step, and that is to consider the action plan implementation. And we plan on coming back to you all at a future date with an item for that, because there are 3 of the 6 strategies that would involve funding, and they would be subject to availability of funding. And that includes a detailed target industry analysis, the branding and marketing that was the phase 2 discussion back in July, and then also development and maintenance of a standalone economic development website. And we had some preliminary costs in our agenda item for that. So we think the first two steps, again, to hear the presentation, provide input, and then accept the plan with any changes. And then a future step would be for us to come back with you with implementation and for decisions to be made at that point in time. What I'd like to do now is to turn it over to Janet Adey, President and CEO of Adey Advantage, to present the positioning plan.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for everyone else who has come today, and I think it's been kind of symbolic of the participation we've had throughout this process. I stopped counting at about 15 man-days, 20 man-days on the ground here in Indian River County to complete this project over the last several months. For the record, as Stan mentioned, my name is Janet Adey. I'm with Adey Advantage, and I head up the firm that did all this work and was actively involved in it. So what I would like to do this morning is just share the highlights of our findings and, again, answer any questions that you may have related to that. We're closely integrated here. As far as the overall project approach, the RFP that was put out was for the positioning analysis, and that it was a very, very smart way to go about this process, because what it involves is basically the top half of the funnel right through the middle of the funnel, and then the beginning of the action plan, which is the bottom of the funnel. So at the top of the funnel, we focus on discovery. We did the on-site visit. We did the stakeholder summit. We talked to 75 or more stakeholders, 47 business leaders. We evaluated 12 sites and buildings, spent a lot of time on the ground here gathering input from folks, as well as conducting our own desk research, which included location criteria and so forth. The goal of all that was to distill that down into the positioning for the county from an economic development standpoint. And I'm going to share with you this morning the asset maps that we came up with, as well as the positioning statement, and our suggestions on the target industry assessment. So we did a target industry assessment, not a full-blown study, but we evaluated the target industries that you have now, and then we move into the action plan. Okay. Some of you may have seen this map before, but for those of you who haven't, let me explain it a little bit. There's going to be two maps like this, and we call these asset maps. This first one has to do with business costs. The second one that I'll show you has to do with business conditions. And basically what we do is we summarize the assets from most important to least important, with most important on the top, least important on the bottom, and then how well the county fares in those, best on the right, room for improvement on the left. And we look at these costs as part of the overall picture of how we're evaluating the county. In this instance, one of the things I would point out in the upper right, which is where we kind of form the basis for our positioning, right, the things that are important where the county does extremely well, would be high-skilled and low-skilled labor costs. And you'll see on the next chart that you also have a great deal of labor availability. Those two together is going to be a pretty powerful piece of the whole story here. When we look at things in the upper left, I would just point out there's not that much that can be controlled in terms of some of those things. And also you may have a question about why there's these dashed lines going up and down. What that means is that that particular location criteria changes its importance depending on which company or industry you're in. So if you're a software company, gas costs probably don't matter all that much to you. But if you're an industrial manufacturing company, that could be pretty significant. So that's how to interpret this chart. Take a look here at the general conditions for business. And I think just, again, looking at from a 30,000-foot view, you would see there's an awful lot of things in that upper right-hand quadrant. There are a lot of potential hooks that we can use to base your positioning on, right? And these range from availability of labor, availability of gas and water, fiber. Water probably bears some comment as nationwide. That's a resource that's extremely limited that you have in very good shape here. You've got highway access, you've got labor force, your educational resources here, not only at the higher education level, but also some of the charter schools being so highly ranked. So a lot of great things there in the upper right-hand quadrant, again, that we focus on for the positioning. I'm going to share with you 2 or 3 slides here about the actual positioning. And this one is a little bit dense, but it has a lot of the details in here. And this would be And I think what I would like to do is let you read that. Is that okay, or would you prefer I read it? It's a little lengthy. I'll let you just read it for a moment. I'll read along silently with you and then point out a couple of things.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Janet, I'd like you to go ahead and read it.
Okay.
Because this is supposed to be the elevator pitch, right?
The next page actually has the elevator pitch,
Okay.
but I can read all of these. I'd be
We have a
happy
height
to.
requirement. We have to be a shorter speech than that.
What's that?
We have a height requirement here in the county, so we would have to have a shorter speech than that one.
I think also if you're recording, it might be helpful for people at home. Indian River County, located on the east central coast of Florida, has access to a labor force of over 470,000 people, which has been growing almost twice as fast as the U.S. average, 17.5% over the last 10 years. These individuals are well educated. 87.3% of them have graduated high school and have access to some of the best training in the nation, including Indian River State College, which was recently named a top 10 community college in the nation. That being said, the cost of doing business is low. Florida is rated the 5th best state in terms of state business tax climate and offers some of the best training grants in the nation. In addition, Indian River County has some of the lowest millage rates in the state, along with reduced impact fees for specific industries. Access to raw materials and markets is also an advantage within Indian River County, as there is ample access to regional markets via I-95 and the Florida Turnpike. Access to international markets is available via the 2 municipal airports nearby Orlando International Airport and several major ports located on the eastern coast. The closest port, Port Canaveral, is designated as a foreign trade zone and can ship products easily into Canada, South America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. All of this before we even mention the superb quality of life experienced within a central Florida county.
See, that's got a 50-story value.
There we go. A couple things that I would point out in this. One is that we're looking at some of the assets regionally. So you're going to say, wait, the population of our county isn't 470,000. When we look at some of the assets the region has, we understand that people move, right, from one side of the jurisdictional boundary to another to go to work or to go out to dinner or to recreate. So we really try to look at what reflects the labor shed. The second thing about that is that it's an additive function. So it tends to add assets that you might not otherwise have, right? So you could add additional airports, add additional colleges and universities, add additional major employers that do have kind of a tangential effect on this region. Second thing that's important about that is that the way that economic development going is there's a lot more involvement of regional groups. And so the county is the community's region, right? And the multiple counties is the county's region, if you're playing along with me. So there's lots of different levels of what a region is, but thinking more expansively is generally helpful, even though we want to commit the investment in the growth within these jurisdictional boundaries. Okay. Now the elevator pitch, and this will be the not the 50-floor one, but the 30-second elevator pitch. Indian River County is an idyllic location known for its way of life. Those who visit, live, or work here find communities are safe, modern, and loaded with ecological, cultural, educational, and technological amenities. It's also a cost-competitive place to grow or expand businesses. In addition, the county offers access to Florida and international markets via interstate highways and multimodal transportation, advanced industries from aviation, aerospace to aquaculture, world-renowned agricultural products and recreational opportunities, research, emerging tech, life sciences, and healthcare in one of the most desirable climates in the country for recreation and for business. Okay.
Might make 4 stories.
4 stories, okay. And then the positioning elements, again, for those who enjoy this idyllic location year-round, Indian River County, Florida offers the best of both worlds, a desirable location for business and pleasure, a balance that helps build your business in the sun.
Jenna, can you write the 4th bullet there? To me, it just kind of seems to end abruptly. When you say research, emerging tech, life sciences, and healthcare.
Yep. It's
industries or something. I mean,
there's a little comma there, and it's supposed to go in one of the most desirable climates in the country.
right.
So yeah, maybe industries to
and then
help
comma
bridge that.
and one
Sure.
of the most desirable. Yeah.
Yep.
It
yep.
just kind of seems
Yep.
cut off there.
Now, Commissioner, that's going to lead right to the next slide, which is going to be about target industries. So which target industries, right, are we talking about? And I highlighted a couple of them there in terms of the research and so forth. But one of the things that was part of our scope of work was to evaluate the current target industries that have been on the work plan here for the last number of years. These include, and I'm going to read these just for my point here, clean energy, life sciences, information technology, aviation, aerospace, financial professional services, manufacturing, warehouse distribution, emerging technologies, arts, entertainment, recreation, post-secondary public and private educational institutions, and other clean light industries. So one of the things that we were asked is to kind of assess this list, and while there aren't many that are that flagrant of outliers, that the size and the scope of the list is really what struck us. Manufacturing, warehousing, and distribution by itself is a huge, significant sector, and then all of these others on top of it. It almost speaks to there's so much that's on the list that it would be hard to be a focus or a specialist on any of those. And so just based on the work that we did here in the interviews and so forth, we did narrow it down a little bit with some recommendations to focus on manufacturing and then break out regional warehousing and distribution and then life sciences and research. And again, I think to foreshadow what one of the recommendations are, as Stan had mentioned as well, the whole idea of going a little bit deeper in target industry analyses, because we still have the economic development element of the comprehensive plan, right, which has set out some guidelines in terms of target wages and some of those kinds of things. And so really being more granular about the types of manufacturing in particular that would be the best fit here in this county and still help support those goals that have been laid out already in the comp plan and also in the marketing plan is where we're looking for more detail and definition. Going to move now to the recommendations, and again, this is a chart of economic development building blocks. It generally goes from organizational strategy at the bottom up through economic assets, positioning, and programs. And the whole concept of doing this positioning study was to get a good understanding of what this county's economic assets were. And the way I think about it is in terms of reverse site selection. So in other words, get a good handle on all of the assets that we have here, and then flip the question around and say, now which businesses or industries would find the greatest value in our particular mix of assets? That's what we're trying to uncover. And our focus has been on that economic assets and the positioning piece. The organizational strategy piece is pretty much in place with the comp plan element and those kinds of things. So we didn't get into those issues. Really focused on those top two there. Okay? Okay. So what I'm going to do now is at Section 7, starting on page 90 of the report, goes through each of our 6 recommendations. And I'm going to go through these one by one in some degree of detail, certainly available if you have additional questions, but kind of share a little bit of the philosophy of why we put them in here. And there's a little bit of a story, too, as far as the order in which we put them. The first one is to focus on business retention and expansion. This is not new to the county. It's been part of the comp plan. It's been part of the Chamber's marketing plan for some period of time. But the emphasis on BRE is a couple-fold. First, as we go around the country and work with communities, we can see that most investment in jobs results from business retention expansion, not from recruiting somebody in from outer space that's going to make everything perfect. A lot of it is truly what I call the blocking and tackling of economic development and having those programs in place. So our recommendations are to put more emphasis on that, and it's a time thing more than anything. It's getting the appointments, it's documenting them, it's analyzing what you come up with. It's all those kinds of things related to the business retention and expansion strategy. From there, we're suggesting that we expand the target industry assessment with a more thorough target industry analysis. And again, I think that we want to get beyond kind of the superficial level of manufacturing and really be able to articulate what the specific industry subsectors are that we think we have a good story for. And this is going to tie into the efficiency of the marketing as well, Because if we just go out there with a general, let's try to recruit some light manufacturing that's also clean, while that's true and that's good, it's going to be very difficult to implement that from a recruitment or even a development standpoint. So looking to get into a little more specificity and granularity on the target industry analysis. The other thing that would provide for us is, you saw the positioning statements for the county as a whole. We basically would end up with positioning statements for each of the target industries we go after. Okay, so I can give you an example. If you're going after data centers, you start talking about electric costs, reliability, natural disaster risk right up front and first, as opposed to if you're going after food processing, which is different criteria. So again, it allows us to have a little bit stronger message to go after each of those. It also usually provides sell sheets and materials that would be used to promote those industries and to attract and develop those industries here. The third strategy is the branding of the county. And what we're recommending in this strategy is to start by auditing the existing brand. And just as an example, we have sometimes the county seal on things, sometimes we have the chamber, sometimes it's a mix of the two, sometimes it's the communities themselves. So how can we start to have a little bit more unified voice about Indian River County as a whole from an economic development standpoint? So again, we suggest starting with an audit. If the audit suggests moving forward, then developing a brand, which could include a logo, a tagline, the look and feel, all that kind of thing, and then rolling out that brand, which is an important function, but primarily one to internal stakeholder groups, at least first. The fourth strategy is a standalone economic development website and related collateral materials. So in today's economic development world, most site selectors hear about communities first on the internet. If you're not there, if they can't find you, if they don't have the information that they need once they get there, they move on. There's over 3,000 counties in this country, and every single one of them, unless you can prove otherwise, has an economic development function. It's really become a very mature industry over these last 5 or 10 years and become very competitive. So it's almost a zero-sum game where we have to be competitive and retain the businesses we have, but then we also have to put our best face forward to go after others. The ED website is different than just any old website, right? There's specific needs in terms of information on sites and buildings. There's specific needs in terms of mapping, and there's specific needs in terms of the kinds of data that these companies need to make decisions. One of the things I will also mention is that I'm talking about recruitment right now, but that same type of information is the exact same type that existing businesses would be interested in, perhaps not at the same threshold, but the same information. Okay. The fifth recommendation has to do with leadership in the presentation of sites and buildings. Earlier on, during one of the stakeholder meetings, the community development director asked us to talk about trends that are happening in economic development. And one of the big trends is risk mitigation. And so all things being equal, right, a company will choose a location that has lower perceived and actual risks. Makes sense, right? You would do probably the same thing if you were making the decision. That has typically played out in terms of shovel-ready site programs, those kinds of things throughout the country. More than 30 states now have some kind of program for that. And the whole purpose, again, is to mitigate risk. So what we're talking about here is making sure that all the properties have information that's complete and updated, and that they can be represented well by the county when they go out and promote them for specific projects. Talking about doing roundtables for developers and property owners. We already did an initial meeting like that sponsored by the Chamber when I was here in January. So getting some of those folks together, explaining how the site selection process works and what their role in it is, which is an important one because most economic development projects start with a search for an available site or building. So it's a very important piece to have. It's kind of your, in the supermarket, right? You got to have milk and orange juice and eggs. You got to have available sites and buildings because that's what draws people into the store. That's what draws people into the region. We're suggesting minimum property listing thresholds, so that there's a standard so that we know that there's going to be basic information on all of these sites, and they're going to be up on all of the websites that site selectors use. Okay? And then the sixth and final marketing strategy is continue to support regional economic development efforts. And I would like to applaud the county and the chamber for the history that they have in this. You are old hands at regional economic development cooperation. It's the sixth strategy here because it's going well, and I'm suggesting continuing it. It's not a lot of change in this regards, but it's extremely important in this day and age to have those relationships and to have built that trust between the counties. And I want to say just one more thing about regionalism, if I could. Sometimes the misperception about regionalism is that it's a desire to be homogenous, to be the same as St. Lucie or Martin or some of these other counties. That's not the case at all. The goal of regionalism is actually to be heterogeneous, right? To say we're a diverse region, come here, and you'll see the place that's the best fit for you. It's about keeping the identity of Indian River County and the communities within it, not about trying to make them all a blended identity of some sort. So with that, I will thank you and be available for any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any questions or comments?
I think maybe we all do just go one way.
Yes, fine.
Yeah.
Commissioner Fletcher, we'll start with you and then go to...
No.
No?
I just want to say that it's been a pleasure working with you from the very inception. You've brought together some interesting facts that we are aware of but have not enhanced to the value that they need to be enhanced. And as far as a marketing concept, I believe that you've developed a great package for us. And I'm pleased that we committed to the initial phase 1, and I'm looking forward to phase 2, 3, and 4. And I hope that this will enhance our ability to be as competitive as we think we are. So I just want to say thank you, and you've done a wonderful job, and I'm fully supportive of the future and all phases.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fletcher. Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really like the parts in here, one focusing on the business retention and expansion. I think everything I've heard, not just with Janet, but everything economic is, the number varies, but it's somewhere north of 80% of all jobs come from business retention and expansion. And, kind of the things in here that really were a red flag in my mind, and Janet, you mentioned it with the risk mitigation and the shovel readiness. Helene Castleton and I just visited a local manufacturer, and they are growing. They're looking to expand. They're getting ready to sign some new contracts, maybe a potential international contract, and they need more room. So it's one of those things where you go, yay! This is great. This is what we want to do. Then we ran into the problem is where in the county can they go? And they looked out at the industrial park where CVS is, and unfortunately there, while the one site where the CVS is was platted and done, and a lot of the other infrastructure is in, the roads, the stormwater, there's still a few things that they need to do to be able to open up additional lots, some final plat work and a few things. But that creates a time risk factor that may not be acceptable to this potential company that wants to expand. Then we Helene and I toured a packing house that is no longer in the citrus business, but it would have fit their needs size-wise. But during our tour, quite frankly, one of the comments I had to the owners was, it's kind of like real estate, and this place really doesn't have good curb appeal. Now, the owners, they have some plans to do some improvements and clean it up some and all that. But of course, it's a chicken or egg thing. They have to weigh that cost of putting the money into this building, maybe without a tenant signed. But at the same time, you may not get a tenant because it doesn't have that curb appeal to meet what they want. And so I think one of the things we need to focus on is working with the private sector there and finding a way to say, you know what, we think we're going to grow. We think we have these companies that are looking to expand, but we need to have places to put them. And so somehow we have to get them to make the commitment to get their properties ready, to be shovel ready, so that we can respond in a very timely fashion. We had another project where they were looking out west, and there was a lot of work to do there to get that shovel ready. And so I think one thing we need to do is make sure we do have these parcels available, shovel ready, so that we can market that. So when somebody comes, that's not an issue we have to deal with, and we can focus on all these other benefits that you pointed out. So, I like the idea of the business retention expansion and working with our local. And the other thing that came to mind when you said more targeted, like light manufacturing, how do we pick that? Because when I go through the county, we have a lot of diverse manufacturers now. We've got a company that makes special valves for big tanker trailer trucks and stuff. We've got a company that manufactures nylon parts for the automobile association industry. A company that makes boats and trailers. A company that makes aluminum towers for the communication, and on and on. A company that makes the gift cards. They make millions of these things, and you never know what's in this county already. But they're all very diverse industries, but they're all here. So how would you even more focus that list? It just seems to me is what I'd rather do is say, okay, all these businesses are successful here. Maybe that should be our target industry because they're already successful here, instead of trying to recreate the wheel, kind of. So just that question there.
Sure. I guess first count about shovel ready. I think that readiness and alignment are the antidote to risk mitigation, to risk. And the fact that the county took on this project and has strengthened the alignment of the county, I think is a very good plus. And I agree with you that there can be more that should be done on the shovel-ready sites to get those ready. I actually believe that those two elements, alignment and readiness, are going to be more important in the future than incentives and some of those things, because if you make it easy and you remove risk, people can get started faster, and that is an incentive. They have less downtime and all those kinds of things. So there are a number of recommendations we have in the property one in particular, but one of them is even doing like a virtual shovel-ready building, where imagine that we knew what target industry was going to go on that plot by CVS, or what target industries. We have a local engineer draw it up. Don't dig anything yet, but just draw it up and show what it would look like. We have Helene bring that, or Stan bring that to the commissioners and say, if this were true, and we had these jobs at these rates, could we pre-approve this? Start thinking ahead to ways that you can use time to your advantage. And then I think that would also help get the property owners on board as far as what we're doing, right, to try to promote that, because we do need good properties that are in good state. So on the target industry thing, when we did our interviews, the focus was the positioning overall. So we heard little bits and nuggets, and if you read through the report, you saw aquaculture, and you saw ocean research, and you saw lots of little hints of things that could be your next emerging industries. What we do in a formal target industry analysis is we do a lot of additional research, which includes desk research at the 6-digit next code level, and we look for not only the standard industries and the growth industries, but the emerging industries. And so we look at factors like location quotients and the current employment base and so forth. And the reason that we do the interviews as well is because that one guy who sells to the auto industry, he may say, you know what, but I have to outsource this other thing because we can't make it. We only do nylon. We don't do metal. Those are all opportunities then, right? So it is a kind of combination of target industry and business retention, expansion, supply chain, So, when I do it, I look at OEM opportunities. I look at target industries, which are maybe not here but would be a good fit. I look at expansion opportunities among your existing base, and then I look at the emerging startup kind of opportunities that you may well have in addition, because you've got some higher education here. You could have some IP coming out of that could, again, give us hints as to what might be the target. And I think the ideal outcome of a target industry analysis is kind of a portfolio that says, we have some kind of standard industries that are bigger and they're not as fast growing, and then we've got these emerging ones. We want to place some bets on that, but not all, and really taking a look at it that way. So that's why we wanted to talk about possibly doing a little bit deeper dive in that target industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien, you brought up some interesting points, and in talking about where these other businesses, where they were looking, and one thing that I see here that really just goes right in line with exactly what you were saying is that the misfortunes of some industries are start turning to be the fortunes of others. And so, for example, the aluminum tower manufacturing facility, that's the old Knight and Mathis building. Knight and Mathis used to build massive pumps to move water prior to the days of the microjet irrigation systems, which were more modern in the citrus business. And so, and the next one goes along with Girard Equipment with their valves. That was inside of a former packing house. And so
Ocean Spray is another one.
Ocean Spray with Ineos, exactly. And so, from that standpoint, I think that as bad as it seems, I really do think we're going to continue to see a consolidation in the packing industry, and we're going to see that because of the economies of scale, and just the sheer volume of fruit is simply not there to justify the number of houses we have here in the Indian River growing region. With that said, though, I think that the infrastructure and that I'm going to call it the vacant building scenario is extremely important, and I think that as a commission, what we need to focus on is the things that we truly have control over. We don't have control over vacant buildings, or I hope not. That's really not where I want to be as a board. But where I think we really can focus right now, and we've kind of had the opportunity to see this with the Citizen Kane project that came forward, utilities and utility capacity, and what you said in that, I'm going to say the virtual building. I'm getting ready to bring something forward. It's going to be more of a virtual utilities, and it's going to be where I envision this is working with municipalities that don't have the ability to do this, predominantly the city of Sebastian and Fellsmere, and to actually say, okay, we're going to design a plant. We're going to have it ready. We're going to have it ready so that at the same time somebody breaks ground on a building, 18 months later, we're going to have the utilities in place to be able to provide water and sewer services where communities like Fellsmere have their industrial, their development plans in effect. And their comp plan was just recently approved. And so these things are coming quick. But it goes back to the things that I think we ought to focus on are really things we can control. And our utility department is cutting edge. And a lot of communities don't have the opportunity to say that because they're still fighting over who serves whom with their utilities. A good example of that is to the south of us in Port St. Lucie versus Fort Pierce in unincorporated Indian River, or St. Lucie County. So, but that's where I am at the end of the day on this whole thing. I think that's a good side of it now. For us to focus on what we can control is exciting.
I think you're right on.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for a great informative presentation. I also want to, looking back at in 2013 when I brought this concept forward, that it was all the commissioners fully supported the concept of going forward, and now I can see we have some other steps to look at going down. One thing I wanted to mention, I'm not sure if he's made it from the city meeting over here, but Eric Medger from the airport called me yesterday and wanted to see if there's, one thing, last Thursday we had about a 5-hour airport commission planning meeting on their new master plan for the airport. One of the initiatives that was approved at that meeting was to actively start pursuing a transport agreement with someone, whether it's a regional carrier from here to Orlando or a point-to-point from here to the Northeast, because the new daily domestic employment numbers that they have gathered for our area shows daily traffic now of about 2,500 travelers from the geographic footprint that could utilize Vero Beach. And when you look at that, that's a significant of enough number to catch the eye of whether it's a Silver on a regional or a JetBlue on a point-to-point type of thing. So at their meeting, they approved going forward to actively pursue to schedule appointments with certain opportunities that can be put together. So they wanted to make sure that the growth of the airport, including passenger service, is somewhere mentioned in the process going forward. We don't have it, but we're actively pursuing, and they're looking at putting together a kind of a go-team budget of, okay, if we can get an appointment in front of this group, who needs to go, what information do we need to have collateral put together to make the best presentation. And they're working with Recondo as their consultant on the airport master plan, but the Sixel Consulting is actually doing the passenger demand calculations. And that's, when I saw the numbers, I had been kind of tracking my own numbers through another means, and these numbers are much more encouraging. The ones I had were 4 years ago because it's the only ones I could readily get available without incurring a cost. So that's one thing to mention. I really like the idea of the standalone economic development site. It can have a link from the chamber's sites from the county, but as you and I have talked, I frequently have some odd habits. I visit other economic development sites. Texas, 267 counties. They probably have 200 unique county economic development sites. Then you look at Ohio, and I look at Ohio and Texas because those two states battle each year for the most jobs created in their state. Texas is one, I think, 8 out of 10. Ohio's 2, and I don't know who won last year.
Texas just won. They announced it last night.
Okay, good. And they actually have a very ongoing battle. But with Governor Scott's efforts, he is really trying to get into the game. And I think when you had mentioned that Florida is number 5 in its overall competitiveness and tax, I think after this legislative session, we might even get to move up a notch with some of the changes and some of the tax issues on business that maybe we'll leave that where we can easily change that number because potentially in 2 months or so, we may put in some things into effect that will really raise our bar and maybe raise us up a number or two. So the website portion is really, I think it's not what we think we should put there is if there's a blank template of, okay, if I go to a site consultant and I want to know something, they're going to say, okay, here's the 20 things we always need to know, and that's what we should easily answer on page 1 or 2 of the website, not what we think, but what those guys are looking for.
Exactly.
And having it in the format that is the easiest for them to use, so we become a friendly place for them to visit and include. And on the regional part, I recently attended a St. Lucie County, the annual Pete Heginger, I believe he was the founder of Tradition St. Lucie West, and he passed away a few years ago, and they give out a honorary award to someone in his memory. And it was a very unique evening. I'd never been to one like that before with them, and it was something that we could look at there was some Martin County folks. Matter of fact, I think the winner was a Martin County entity won the St. Lucie County Pete Heginger Award, which was kind of a unique thing to see. But I think we're on the right track. This is the first step, and I think when I brought this forward, this would be one that would identify some other things. And I think reverse looking at things, what do we have, what are we good at, and then how does that equate to a targeted list is really the more focused way to go after something. We could think we're the greatest at this, but if our assets and our resources say we're really here, this is who we should go after. And if we want to go after this, what do we need to add to go after that? And lastly, on the shovel ready, shovel ready can be a leading or misleading term. People's definition of shovel ready should be what is the industry's definition, not what we think. Because when you throw in the water management district, depending on whose district it is, that could be a 3-month question. But if you have where CVS is, they have a master water plan for stormwater, that then is off the table, but then there may be some other things. And the idea of working with the virtual building site plan concept, you don't do anything, but you say, here's a 5-acre footprint, and here's 5 different facility types we could put on it and kind of get those pre-approved conceptually. And then also it's a marketing tool. And there's 1 or 2 commercial contractors here that actually have that virtual demonstration facility type of thing. And then it just shows we're here's our book of virtual-ready opportunities, and how can we make that available for someone to submit their site? What kind of dollars does it take to get something virtually put together? We might be able to do some type of public-private partnership to say, okay, we'd like to have 20 facilities ranging from X to X for uses from A to Z in there, and have a little bit of a menu of things that are readily available for example purposes, or it may be a good fit for someone. But I know at some point we'll have to talk about the associated cost to add some of these other steps, but I think they'll be well worth the investment. And also the retention of our existing businesses. One that Commissioner O'Brien had mentioned, the credit card guys that have the facility off Oslo that make this, I guess you call it not a smart card, but they were in the business and then sold out apparently, and then I guess their non-compete or something had passed where they could kind of regroup, and now they have the next generation, the next best thing, and they're selling them all around the world. And their big ticket items are about $2 million a piece. I think they're not inexpensive little machines, but they ended up here, and then I think we're here and then got into that recreating that business again. But there's so many unique things that we find every day that we have one of those here. I never would have dreamed that we had one of those here, especially where it's located wouldn't have been typically where I would expect to have ever found them. But we have to create easy opportunities for those that want to expand or enhance. I know I worked with Float on Boat Trailer when they were going through some of their permitting, and there was a definition of, do you need to have a firewall, do you or don't you, and do you have to sprinkle the building that's going to contain aluminum products? And it was a $300,000 question, and if it applied, that meant we're moving somewhere else where it doesn't apply, where we don't have to do this, and we're able to bring the fire marshal, the building official, the building owner, the architect, and we met out there and we said, well, it got down as simple as if we put the boat cushions in a standalone building, put the cushions on the boat as it goes out the door for delivery, you don't have to spend the $300,000.
Wow.
But you had to get all the folks on the right page, and it could have not had as good of an outcome, but fortunately it did. Now the building, I think, is CO'd, and they're ramping up production and employment. So I think each of us have to play an active role when we see someone and try to reach out and visit as many of these local businesses, because they like to know that we're concerned about them, that we come visit them, and that we really appreciate what they do. Whether it's some people said, would you rather have a company with 100 employees or 10 companies with 10? I'd rather have the 10 with 10 and help each of the 10 grow to become 100. Not that I don't want the one with 100. Kind of like I want them all, like my kids at Christmas, they want everything. But we have to.
Isn't that the truth? More expensive the older they get.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want bigger toys.
Yeah.
Especially the ones in their 40s. Yeah.
Right. So I think we're poised to really kind of continue on where we're at with some of the ideas of where you think we should go, and just look forward to kind of keeping this process moving forward, and look forward to hopefully the other commissioners will feel the same way, as we have to look at what will each of these segments cost, and would they be done in the order that you kind of proposed? Is that also the order of priority?
Yeah, and the report does have a timeline. I think it's page 98, 104, page 100, I'm sorry. No. It was 96. Is that right, Stan?
Yes, yep, 96.
96, so there is a timeline here. Of course, being optimistic, we started in April, having some things going, but, the BRE plan and the software, the target industry analysis is 2 or 3 months. The branding can be done before that and then kind of marries up when the target industry analysis gets completed. The collateral follows. So there is a little bit of a sequence here as far as what you do first.
Also, just to add, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, and these certainly interrelate. You do the standalone website, and then as you develop the materials, the branding, and so forth, that obviously is going to play in. So it's a bit dynamic.
Commissioner Solari?
I'm good, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one thing Commissioner Zork brought up with INEOS, I think one of the other strengths we need to talk about is, the INEOS plant was a one of a kind in the nation. And our building department, our inspectors and staff, and the planning department, we were able to plan that thing, permit it, inspect it, and get it done. And it's a complex facility. We just toured that a couple weeks ago. And, you know, there's millions of miles of cable and pipes and all kinds of things. But I think it's a strength that we should promote, that we have a staff that can permit and get these things built that are one of a kind. And I just wanted to add that to, you know, I think that's just a critical component when you talk about shovel-ready and things like that, yeah, bring it on. We can get it done and get you up and running. So.
And the best way to prove that is to show what you've already done,
right.
You know?
Yeah. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. This time, Commissioners, I'll open it up to the public. If there's any comments or questions from the public, please feel free. We have the podium right up here if anybody would like to have any comments. One at a time. All right. I guess there's no public comment on this. Then this is the presentation. And what we'll do then, we'll move on to we'll move the item up. So we will go to item 12A1 at this time, Commissioners. And what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Flesher.
As I said earlier, it's been a great honor and privilege to work with the Addy Advantage Agency, and I'm very pleased at what we've seen. We knew from the onset that this was going to be a multi-phase project, and that we would get to this date in and about this stage in and about March, and you're right on target as anticipated. And I look forward to seeing the next phases come to fruition. And I believe that it would be remiss if we did not have the opportunity to have a standalone website and to actually show all of the hard labors. After all, we've asked the taxpayer to support this, and we now have what is appearing to be a near-perfect product. And I'm sure that you see your own fine-tuning up the road. So with that, I would like to make a motion that we approve going forward for phases 2, 3, and 4.
Second.
Got a motion that we move forward with phases 2, 3, and 4, and I believe the only verbiage that you wanted to add industries to that, that's the only change as far as the language inside the actual thing, correct? Are you good?
Yes, on the elevator speech.
Page 89.
Okay.
Good with that. Nice, tight elevator speech.
Okay. We've got a motion from Commissioner Flesher. Did I get a second?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner
Mr. Chairman,
Zork.
does the Commissioner want to add that we accept the report that's in the package?
That's as far as the strategic positioning, targeted industry, and the action plan?
The report as presented would also be included. That would be going forward. Commissioner, thank you. In addition, Commissioner O'Brien's recommendation on industry will be favorably considered with Ms. Addy.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yeah, the motion just specified the 3 tasks that have funding associated with them. There are 3 other additional strategies that staff recommends we can do in-house, and I would just ask to amend the motion to include all 6 strategies and not just the 3 with funding.
Not just with the 3 phases, and that would be presumed that staff was going forward with all the recommendations as well. Thank you.
All right. So basically, we're moving forward with the strategic positioning, the targeted industry assessment, and the action plan. The action plan with the 6
2, 3, and 4,
and then adding the words industries in the elevator speech. And I've got a motion from Commissioner Flesher with a second from Commissioner Zork. Is there any further discussion? Anybody from the audience? Seeing no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, we'll come back with a little more information on implementation.
All right. Super.
Mr. Chair, one last question before Janet dashes off to the airport to go back to zero weather. That the offer of, your company has really been growing and doing a lot of work in the southeastern U.S. that, it really might be ripe for a seasonal office or a part-time office for your staff.
Right.
And branching out across the country. And we just really like to encourage you, now that you know all the great things that we have, firsthand because you've seen most of it, that you should consider that in your business plan going forward.
So noted, with a comment that Commissioner Zork's sense of timing is extremely good. There's storms and blizzards and all kinds of stuff awaiting me. So.
Well, and in all candor, you are a site selection firm also.
That's right.
And so this, we always talk about getting ourselves in front of site selectors. And this kind of kills two birds with one stone, if you will.
Right.
We do our economic positioning, but also, at least now, there's a site selecting firm out there that knows about as much of Indian River County as anybody.
Good.
So thank you.
And you wouldn't have to retrofit a citrus building. We have fine executive offices available that would suit your needs as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I would like to thank the commissioners. I'd like to thank Stan and his staff, Penny and her staff, and all of the citizens who participated, because this has been a very, very fulfilling project. There's been so much forward motion during the course of these last several months, and it couldn't have happened without the support of everybody who participated. And we stopped counting at about 150, so thank you for everybody who personally made time out of their schedules to participate in this, and for staff in terms of helping move it forward. It's been a great pleasure for us. Thank you again.
Okay. Super. All right, that moves us to our next proclamation presentation, which is a presentation by Dr. Edie Witter, Ph.D. with CEO, with the senior scientist, the Ocean Research and Conservation Association, with an update on Kilroy, the water monitoring recent progress. Edie, welcome.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here today. I am here today with Warren Falls, Orca's Managing Director, and George Jones, our Director of Special Projects, and Robin Danahauer, who's our Vice President of Marketing and Public Relations. I am extremely happy to be here today to share some very good news with you, but I wanted to start out by saying a very special thanks to this Commission for your patience on this project. I did know that when we took on this effort of putting sensors in the relief canals that it was going to be a challenge and a tough nut to crack, but it has far, far exceeded my expectations on that count. I recognize that this has put you gentlemen in a difficult position because the community wants to know what you're doing to deal with the problems in the Indian River Lagoon. You had taken very innovative action and wanted to be able to point to that action in order to show your efforts on that behalf, and to have all of these challenges come in our way has been difficult for all of us. That's why I want to spend a little bit of time today to talk about the steps along the way, because we have such exciting results that I think you're going to be a little surprised by the response that you're going to be getting. People are going to be coming to you now to want to know how this was done. We just attended a big meeting up in Tallahassee of water quality managers from all over the state, and I can tell you we're ahead of the curve. So you need to be prepared for some of the questions that you're going to be receiving. So we put Kilroy's in the 3 relief canals, the North Main and South relief canals. And these were challenging environments, challenging locations. We were restricted by Indian River Farms Water Control District about where we could mount the Kilroys, which turned out to be somewhat of a problem. It was an incredibly nasty environment for optical sensors. The worst was the North Canal, where we had such bad shoaling that we actually had to construct kind of a frame around it, because otherwise it kept getting buried by sand. We had scouring of our optics that actually damaged both 2 instruments both in the North and the South Canal. Just to put this in the simplest possible terms, when you're trying to measure nutrients in a water sample, the standard way of doing this is you shine different colored light through the water and see how that light is absorbed. And what's called the wet chemistry measurement system, which is what has been used for years, involves putting the water through something that's called a cadmium column. And what that does is it changes one of the forms of nitrogen, which is nitrate, to nitrite. And that allows you to measure the color in a range that's easy to measure. And it's basically the visible range. And so that's what was done for years. And that's what's still done when you take a hand sample and you send it to a lab. That's generally what they're doing. So what we brought to you gentlemen was a revolution, we believed, in optical measurement. And this is what the scientific community is very excited about, are these new optical sensors. And they work by actually shining ultraviolet light through the water sample, and there's no chemical step to convert it from nitrate to nitrite. They just measure nitrate directly by measuring that spectrum, but you're having to measure it in the ultraviolet portion of the spectrum. This is what a clean spectrum would actually look like. Well, the first challenge that we ran into in the canals, and it took us a while to figure this out because it was so completely unexpected, was that we have saltwater intrusion in our canals. And this was extremely unexpected given that this was above the weir. Also, in due diligence, we had taken hand samples from those canals before we started, and there was no evidence of salinity. But that's because we took them from surface waters, and the saltwater intrusion is coming in deep. And this is actually a problem all around Florida. What's happening is we're pumping water out of our freshwater aquifers to feed and water our population and our crops and our grass, and it's reducing the pressure within the freshwater aquifer, which is allowing salt water to intrude. This is a big deal. This is not obviously what we came in to look at, but I think you need to be aware of it. We just put another system in the C-24 canal down in the St. Lucie estuary quite a bit further inland, and we found saltwater intrusion. We now know to look for it. But, in some places around Florida, they have destroyed their aquifers because of the saltwater intrusion, and now they're trying to look at desalination plants to deal with it. I just share that with you as a fairly serious point that we need to be thinking about. But what happened was what would have been a very clean spectrum became something that looked like this, because what actually happens when you've got salt water is you've got all of these other elements, particularly bromide and hydrogen sulfide, that interfere with your measurement of that ultraviolet spectrum. There are mathematical algorithms that deal with this, and that's what people do when they're using these optical sensors out in the open ocean environment. So that's what we proceeded to do. We recalibrated the system. We instituted all of these mathematical algorithms. But then we ran into the other problem, which is that there was very dirty water periodically within those canal systems. And that dirty water interferes with the optical path length that you're trying to measure. So the way that these optical systems deal with it is they change the path length. If you've got very dirty water, you make the path length shorter so you can get a decent signal-to-noise ratio. So we couldn't make the path length short enough with the adaptations that this third-party sensor system had to us, so we had to go back to the manufacturer. They actually manufactured a whole new optical system for us so that we could deal with the incredibly dirty water that we were getting in especially the North Relief Canal, which has been our real bugaboo. And we got something that was sort of working, but it is very, very tricky, because if your path length is too long, you get a spectrum like at the top. If it's too short, you get at the bottom of the middle one, and you've got to get the Goldilocks range, or you're not getting a decent measurement. And the problem is that the water quality changes very quickly. Now, we did manage to get data at some considerable effort. The blue spikes that you see here was the kind of stuff we were getting originally before we figured out about the saltwater intrusion. We were very confused about this for a while because it didn't make any sense, because when we took the sensors out, brought them into the lab and ran things through them, they worked fine. But that's because we didn't know about the saltwater. So once we recalibrated the system, we started getting what you see in pink there, which were reasonable measurements. But the trouble is we couldn't maintain them for any length of time because it would change so rapidly. So this was a section that I had shown you previously where we had managed to get the thing stabilized for a period of time, and we were able to calculate that we were getting about 100 pounds per day of nitrate coming out of the main relief canal. And we had a hand sample taken at approximately the same time that helped confirm that in that portion of time it was correct. But the problem is that it would go from practically gin clear water to coffee colored in less than an hour. And we can't be running out there to change the optical path. There's just no way to do it. And it's more than these mathematical algorithms can deal with anyway. So it took a long time to come to this conclusion because everybody's been touting these optical systems. I've been talking to scientists all over the country about this issue. It's a big issue everywhere. Most people, where they're using them, it turns out, not in anything nearly as challenging as what we're trying to do here with these canals. But those canals are the key to finding where pollution is coming from. So it's a challenge that we need to meet. So what we've done is we've gone back to look at the wet chemistry systems, and there are now automated systems available. We did a lot of due diligence on this, talking to people. They had kind of gone out of favor. This particular unit that we've gone with has been used for 10 years, but it went out of favor, and then it went back into favor, and there were some changes made to it. But we now have a system that we've installed, and in December we got the first unit, and we installed it in the North Relief Canal because we figured if we can make it work there, we can make it work anywhere. And so the first range that you see there was what we were getting. It was pretty stable. We were pretty happy with it. And we were especially happy with what you see there in purple. One of the disadvantages of a wet chemistry system like that is you have to have those bags of reagents that were hanging in the box, so it's labor intensive to maintain these things. But one of the advantages is that one of those bags contains a standard. And so you can run the standard routinely to make sure that your system is staying within calibration. And we've been being so cautious that we run a standard every time we take a sample. Most people do it once a day, but we've been doing it every time we take a sample just to make sure, and it's been spot on. But the one problem that we were having was that these newer units had been made without limit switches in the syringe pumps. And so occasionally the thing would get into a state where we couldn't tell whether we'd pumped the entire syringe into the test chamber. So that's the block of blank time that you see there. We had to pull it out. We sent it back to the manufacturer, and they put in limit switches. And so what you see to the right there is what we've gotten since we got it back. I'm going to come back to the spikes in a minute, but if we expand that, and look at what we're getting, we see, that onboard standard OBS is pretty rock solid. And then the red squares that you see there are the grab samples that Indian River County has been taking. And while I'm thanking people, I definitely want to thank the staff at Public Works of in Indian River County. They've been wonderful to work with. We consider them partners. We're all trying to solve this problem together. In December, when we were still having problem with the syringe pump issues, we weren't matching very well. But since we've done that, we have a pretty good match. And then the green triangles are our own grab samples. And what we do is we take those, we go down, we take a bottle sample, and we send it off to Pace Analytical, which is the same lab that Indian River County is using. We're getting very, very good correlation. Just to show where the samples are taken, the one on the yellow dot there is where Indian River County is taking their grab samples, and we're on Route 1 there, just downstream a tiny bit, which is where the Kilroy is. So these are taken pretty close together. There are a few differences that might you'd expect some variability, but if we look at this, so this is the correlation over time. In the interest of honesty, I included that really nasty drop on December 17th. Actually, we know what went wrong there because the cadmium coil had failed. It's a common characteristic of new instruments. It's called infant mortality. You often have your first failures in your first few days of installation. But after we got it back and started measuring in February, now we see the correlations between what we've been getting and what Indian River County has been getting and what the Kilroy has been getting. And that is really, really good data. Obviously, we want to see more of that. We want to see over time, and we want to see what happens with rainstorms. In terms of these spikes, we're very interested in what those spikes are about. They don't seem to be correlated with rainfall. Looking at rainfall events greater than a half an inch, those, if you look at them in expanded form, those aren't very good correlations at all. There's nothing on that one on the left. The middle one at 0.9 inches is actually between 2 days where there were spikes. The one at 0.86 inches looks good at this scale, but if you look at it closer, it's not really a very strong correlation at all.
Where's the rain gauge relative to the canal, though?
This one was at the St. Lucie Municipal Airport.
Well, that's not a very good one.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
You're not going to get any correlation at all with that.
No, probably not. And so, actually, we've had so little rain over this period of time anywhere. But we're going to be putting the weather stations in shortly. We're going to put one in on a Kilroy that we're going to be putting in the main relief canal as we go forward with this.
And,
At the
and will
Kilroy
those be
site.
further west, upstream? 'Cause
No, it's actually going to be right on the Kilroy, right, Warren? The weather station is going to be on the Kilroy at the main relief canal.
We have 3 remote units we're going to put out west.
Oh, okay. And 3 remote units we're going to put out west.
Because to me, I think that's where you need, because
Yeah.
that's where the water's coming from.
Yeah, you're right.
If you measure rainfall right where the Kilroy is, to me, that doesn't tell you anything worthwhile. But you got to have those rain gauges further west where the water's hitting and then moving to the east. I would. That's
No,
what
I
would do.
absolutely agree. Actually, if you look at the data from the USGS meter, which is west of the where the Kilroys are, there is a correlation between that rise that you see and that spike, but once again, it's not a great correlation because it starts at the plateau before the rise. But it may be exactly what you're talking about is, if something happened further west, it caused a nutrient pulse to come down, and that's what we're measuring there. But, once we get those, we haven't focused on the weather stations issues because we've been struggling so hard to get this wet chemistry system working. But I do believe that we actually do have it working now. I cannot promise you that we've cracked this nut, but I think we have. And it's a huge deal. This is not just a nationwide problem, this is a worldwide problem. We have dead zones appearing all over the planet because of nutrient loading. And it's particularly serious in a place like this. It's not just going to impact our local quality of life, which it's already doing, but it can get much, much worse, as these pictures indicate. But it's also impacting the ocean as a whole, which is how I got involved in this in the first place, because estuaries are the nurseries for the ocean. 78% of the commercial fish spend some portion of their life cycle in an estuary. And so the fact that we're killing estuaries is extremely serious. So, the chance to actually find out where this pollution is coming from, to actually have a monitoring capability, which is what everybody's been looking for, is a huge deal. And I'm extremely excited about it. We now have 2 more wet chemistry systems on order, and we're ready to install them in the main and the south relief canal. We've put a lot of our own money into this effort because it's that important to us, but we are very grateful for the partnership with Indian River County. As I said, it's a huge deal, and you guys are to be commended for taking the lead in this manner. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
I got a couple, too. Let's start off with, you talked about 100 pounds per day is what you're measuring, and I'm assuming that's pretty much average through all of our 3 canals?
That was during the wetter part of the season. That was with the old system. Since we put the new system in, there hasn't been much rain at all, and it's been down closer to 25 pounds per day.
And I guess really, as we start pulling together the TMDLs that were, as far as what we were allowed to discharge and that, are we starting to and maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, but what I'm trying to do is extrapolate some information from data that you're starting to get here and asking our staff. Are we almost to the point now that we can start actually coming up with a plan of some kind as far as remediation of anything? Are we thinking, oh my gosh, this is worse than we thought it was going to be? Is it better than we thought it was going to be? Or can we even come to any logical conclusion at all?
I think when we can do what Commissioner O'Brien has suggested and have these weather stations out further west so that we can start doing a correlation, and you see that, okay, well, there's a correlation between that weather station but not these, and this spike, then you can start pinpointing where the pollution has actually come from and have a chance at mitigation.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll start down here this time with Commissioner Solari.
To sort of answer Wesley's question, to me, what this tells us, based on very preliminary information, is that some of the things we've thought of in the past about the 3 relief canals aren't true. I mean, if the 100 pounds a day is a high level, which I'd question, then the total pounds is just in the realm of the 3 relief canals is 80,000 pounds, where some numbers have thought that there was some hundreds of thousands of pounds. So, and if, again, very roughly, not knowing any volumes and stuff, but if on the same ratio with 100 pounds a day for the main relief canal, that might suggest 25 pounds for the south, 25 pounds a day for the south relief canal, which would be 8 or 9,000 pounds a year, roughly, which is all being taken up, for instance, by the Egret Marsh. The Egret Marsh takes up more pounds than that. So I mean, if there's really only around 80,000 pounds that is entering the lagoon from the 3 relief canals, we'd have to rethink everything we're doing. Mm-hmm. But again, initially it just doesn't seem to make sense.
Well, there's a clarification here. So there's 2 different types of nitrogen that we're talking about here. So the kind of nitrogen that we're talking about, that we're measuring, is what's known as reactive nitrogen. And that's the stuff that's available to algae to create the algae blooms. But there is also what's called total nitrogen, and that includes the organic nitrogen that's bound up in proteins and DNA and things like that. That it comes down in much larger quantities. It's not immediately available to the algae, but if you have an active microbial community, it could potentially be converted. So you've got 2 things you've got to worry about here, and if you look at the TMDLs, they talk about both of those types of nitrogen.
Okay, well, then it becomes a matter of how fast the water's flowing, because, okay, so this is just getting us a total of the reactive nitrogen?
Correct.
Okay, so that just gives us a small portion of what we need to know then.
Correct.
Is your reactive nitrogen, is it nitrates, nitrites?
That's right.
Those are the only 2?
No, ammonia is also, and actually that's one of the exciting things about this new wet chemistry system. People have not generally been able to measure ammonia in real time. This system will be able to do that. We have to install a 3rd channel. We're planning to do that at our own expense, just because it's something we want to find out about. But usually what happens is with an active microbial community, ammonia gets turned into nitrate very quickly, and nitrate gets turned into nitrate, and so that's why everybody focuses on nitrate. That's the pool, usually, that is the primary pool of reactive nitrogen.
Okay. It really seemed to me after you put in the stop limiters, or that really the data really tightened up.
Yes.
Impressively. And when I say it tightened up from not just what you were getting, but also what the grabs were doing also.
Yes.
I don't understand what that was. Can you explain that just real quick? What that's is it just the sample?
Yeah. So what happens is that it uses syringe pumps to push the liquid into the reaction chamber, And without limit switches, sometimes what would happen is you wouldn't get the whole slug being pushed into the chamber. And so it would underestimate.
So it just basically calibrated, it gave you a controlled amount of specimen.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Zorc.
Yes, a couple questions on those sort of unexplained spikes. There's a couple of things you might want to look into. One, at least on the main relief canal, where sometimes I think the district pulses the water to get the lettuce to move, what I call the water lettuce that goes to the salvage system that we have over here.
Yep.
Does two things. It's not related to rainfall. It's related to a goal of moving something that's in the canal area. And secondly, there's a number of the tilting weirs at 43rd Avenue in the main relief canal that when those tilt, they're holding back the sediment buildup behind it. So when you do get a rain event, you get not just what's in the rain event that's moving, but you also have the accumulation of what's been down there also gets stirred up. So it almost gives you probably a false over positive because it's not moving just the current, it's moving the sediment buildup. So you're getting a lot of churning in the water and it's carrying a lot more with it. So they're looking at, and I don't know how they keep track of when they do those pulses to move stuff or for maintenance.
Well, I mean, that actually is exactly the advantage of having a real-time system like this, because otherwise, you know, you're going to miss that because, as you say, it's a pulse.
Right.
But it could be a fairly significant pulse.
Right. It could be a small volume, but a significant of what it's carrying with it. Secondly, the other Kilroys that you have, because I've gone online and seen them before, they're near Taylor Creek area. I think there's one.
We've pulled a lot of them in anticipation of revamping them to put these wet chemistry systems on them. So I don't think we have one at Taylor Creek right now.
Okay.
Right.
But I think there was one in the past. And what I'm wondering is the prior placements before these were put in were in, I'd say, the main Indian River water body area, which is a heavy salt water body that if they worked okay in that salt water, what is the difference between the salt issue that we're dealing with when they've been moved west of the...
The ones that we had out before did not have the nutrient sensors on it because they were so expensive we just didn't have the funding to put them in. That's why what you did was so important to us, because we did not have the capability to start testing nutrient sensors until you guys partnered with us to be able to start figuring this out. It was a huge deal for us.
And last question, Mr. Chairman. I think when you get the total nitrogen number tells you one thing, but really getting the ownership of who's responsible for, is it animal waste, human waste, fertilizer, decomposing leaves, all the different components, how involved would it be to say on that's a much more expensive process to drill down further in the information, but what would be a reasonable time to do something on that? Maybe once a month to look at your samples, to pull one and actually send it to be analyzed and really get that full breakdown, because then that to me tells you where you need to focus on solutions. If part of it's rainfall nitrogen, well, we can't fix that. If it's fertilizer, we have something that we're working towards on that. If it's animal waste or human or septic groundwater flow, unless you have the breakdown of who's responsible for each percentage portion, it doesn't tell us where we really need to put our efforts at in terms of whether it's regulation change or monitoring change or something else.
Yeah, with that, I mean, as with all hand sampling, the more often you can do it, the better story you're going to have, because it is sporadic. One of the things that we've been doing in the C24 canal down in St. Lucie is we've been doing quarterly mapping of the muck in the bottom of the canal. And measuring total nitrogen in the muck along with toxicity and phosphorus. And we're starting to learn some pretty important things. And if money were no object, my goal would be to do that for all of the canals up and down the lagoon. But we're learning a lot as we're doing that. It's proving to be a pretty powerful technique, and I'm hoping that we can figure out from this. It's a 2-year study. That we're going to be able to figure out, what we can do minimally to get the same kind of information.
Right. I know on the main relief canal, we have a sediment wall near the Vero Beach Country Club area, and the tilting weir at 43rd adds as some. But if you took just using pole sample going down into the muck, it ranges anywhere from 2 to 6 feet deep going from there to the lagoon, and that's an issue on something I'm probably in a month or two I'm going to be bringing forward is, one, how do we stop our continuing adding to that, and then how do we deal with that accumulation of that large volume of sediment buildup that when you get a big rain event or a hurricane, it takes all that stuff and then just blasts it everywhere.
It's an absolutely huge issue. I got a call from the New York Times last year asking what I thought would be a good X Prize. And, the X Prize is $1 million for somebody that can solve some kind of problem, like how to do commercial launches into space. And I told them muck removal. And, and they had no idea what I was talking about. In fact, they didn't even include it because they were so mystified by it. But it's a huge, huge problem. Removal of it can cause as much damage as leaving it there if you do it wrong.
If you do it wrong. And I use the word vacuuming because you can't just churn it up and get a portion of it out and then you have the rest of it move
right, and
downstream.
then what do you do with it? Because, if it's got a high-level toxicity, actually, we're in consultation with somebody that Senator Hayes put us in touch with that is claiming a novel technique for detoxifying sediment. And we've taken some samples and we're starting to test it ourselves. I'm not sure it's scalable, but on the scale that we need. But
detoxifying them in place or detoxifying them once removed?
On removal.
And just real quick, without going too much into it, you talked about the exciting things that you're learning with the sediments. What, in 3 or 4 sentences, what is it that you're finding so exciting that you're learning from the sampling in C24?
When we map the C24, so when we map it for total nitrogen, we found very specific hot spots associated with side canals, and phosphorus, very specific hot spots that are different from the nitrogen hotspots, but they are also associated with side canals. So we can now look at land use and agriculture techniques and irrigation systems. And our hope is that we can work with the agricultural community as collaborators. Our goal at ORCA is to be collaborators as we have been with you, not to be finger pointers, because the farmers don't want to waste fertilizer, and we all have to eat. And so I think we just need to. They'll be happy if we can show them how they can save fertilizer usage if we figure out where the problems are coming from.
I think everybody on this commission looks forward to the day when somebody will tell us, okay, how many manatees there should be, how many acres of seagrass there should be, how many, and because then it gives us that something that we can say, okay, this is what the scientists are saying is exactly what it should be, and so. Hopefully, once we determine exactly what's flowing through our canals, that's the first answer to a question before we can start asking the second.
I think it's the most important thing we can do for the Indian River Lagoon is figure out what's coming out of these canals and tributaries. I mean, that's what the history of Florida is about, was draining the swampland. But it was done without any understanding of biological filtering and how that works. That's why we have this mess with the Caloosahatchee River, the Kissimmee River Basin. They straightened it out in order to have fast drainage into Lake Okeechobee and immediately polluted Lake Okeechobee, and now they're spending billions of dollars to put the oxbows back into the Kissimmee River because they realized what a huge mistake it was. Sure. So we need to figure out how to work with nature.
Commissioner O'Brien?
It seems like there's 2 issues here. One is the constant steady flow of nitrogen coming down, be it 100 pounds a day or 25 or whatever, and then the pulses, the slugs coming through. And to Commissioner Zork's point, I think with that constant flow, we could just take maybe 3 or 4 different grab samples under that normal flow and have it analyzed for source, and that would probably pinpoint where it's coming from.
Well, it's going to tell you, and then you're going to go, well, I think it's probably coming from...
Exactly, and then we'll know if it's septic leakage and what. So I think that'd be worth doing. And then, of course, we need to tackle the surges and the sediment and all that. But I see those as two different issues. But I think it'd be very worthwhile to do some samples and have it broken down, the source of the nitrogen under that constant flow, that 100 pounds a day, figure out where that's coming from. And then just a question for Chris or Joe. Where are we now on just kind of the contract with Orca, and have we already paid them for the Kilroys? I know we sent a letter asking them to take them out and refund the money, but so where are we at financially on this?
Chris Moore, Public Works Director. We paid for the first year of monitoring, and not just for the North Relief Canal, but all three canals. We had been monitoring the results of the Kilroys, and because we didn't have good, accurate, automated measurements reported, we've been working with Orca to try and bring the instruments into compliance. We figured, Keith and I, looking at the readings, that 1/10 of a milligram per liter would be a good tolerance level. If we could get within that 1/10 of a milligram, we felt that they would be considered accurate readings. We've not gotten there until December of last year. With the exception of 2 data points, one on December 18th and one on December 24th of 14. Since that time, we've gotten weekly readings within that 1/10 of a milligram tolerance level. So since late December, the readings have been good. They've been coinciding with our grab samples, and we're satisfied with them. But all the 2 years previous to that, we didn't get any good readings from any of the canals. So in our correspondence with Orca, they said that, look, we still feel that we owe the county 1 year of accurate automated readings on all 3 canals. And they've steadfastly said that they're willing to do that as soon as they get their instrumentation problems fixed. So we paid $73,000 for year 1. It was a 3-year agreement. We paid the $73,000 for year 1, but we haven't gotten the year's worth of readings.
Yeah, I wrote a letter asking for the funds back because we didn't have the results. I think the easiest way to resolve this is to extend the contract for a year or till we get a year's worth of good readings. We've asked for a refund for the $73,050. I think in everyone's best interest is to probably ask them to extend it to get a year of good readings. And I think that would resolve the problem.
And that's where I would like to be as well. And I appreciate all the work you all put in to try to correct this. And I do know you all put your own money into it to try to find a solution. And I appreciate that. And certainly I have an interest in seeing this working so we have good data. So, I'm more than willing to let this thing keep going. I think we should continue to do our grab samples just, maybe for another 60 days, just so that we, have and the data Edie showed, those last couple of weeks looked really good. But if we continue to do our grab samples for maybe another 60 days, just to make sure, we have a 100% confidence level. I would like, to see us keep doing that, but I certainly have an interest in keeping this moving forward and extending it. So,
well, statistically, it would, 60 days, I understand that, but if this is, in my opinion, it's going to be, let's hope, I'm going to be the optimist here, that this is going to be the beginning of larger monitoring. And so I'd rather us do a lot of grabs to continue our side of getting the data to where we get down to the point where our professional engineers are saying, yes, what the Kilroys are giving us over a 12-year or 12-month period even is giving us that data that we're after before we start spending more taxpayer dollars on it to implement in other parts of our bodies of water.
I think that there's ways that we could check their accuracy, maybe continuing with the weekly samples for a given period of time, 30 days, 60 days, and then extending them out maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months as kind of a check against their equipment. And once we got that confidence level up, then we could...
Or even for weather events, perhaps. Sure. Because if to make sure that you get a spike, we get a spike, that may be...
Yeah, that trick with that is who's going to be out there in a raging storm to... that's always the problem.
That's the beauty of having staff, Edie.
Joe? I tried to save you, Chris.
I'll be delegating that.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Dr. Wood, thank you so much for your weekly updates. I really appreciate your input. Yes, we all have a vested interest in this. I wanted to first start off with, I'll maybe translate the misunderstanding about the muck. You see, here muck is a sediment, and in the colder climate, muck is the water column. So they don't have, there's a little different level of appreciation for the word muck. As far as, I just want to revert back to earlier in one of the slides, you had identified a bromide spike, and I just wanted to ask you, is that alarming, concerning, or have you begun to treat that data separately?
No, the bromide is what you expect from seawater,
Right.
and so that's a consequence of the seawater intrusion. Fortunately, the wet chemistry system that we're now using is not impacted in any way by salt water versus fresh water, so it can vary all at once, and we won't be bothered by it now.
So we're going to take that one off the table.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, it's unfortunate. Dr. Gilmore was here earlier, and he had another previous engagement.
He had to count fish.
Yes, yes. But we've had some. I've had some discussion with him about the instruments as well, and his concern, his full support of what you're doing. But and I don't want to speak for the doctor, but he did identify that, as you said, that with cutting edge technology, you may have a rather rapid rate of infant mortality. So, again, I believe that he was in full support, but unfortunately we don't have the benefit of his presence right now. There was some, again, we've discussed the letter that had gone out, and then a subsequent letter as well. And it's my understanding now, all of our understanding, that Joe would like to revisit this and see this continue on. I appreciate his recommendation and would like to make that motion that we would continue the process with the understanding that we would have the grab samples that were now identified as consistent by staff as well. And I'd just like to ask staff to have those grab samples directly correlated to ORCA's identified markations. In other words, we have the same coordinates, so we're getting the same grab sample. There could be some deviation just attributed by the area of the sample grab.
There's also a time issue, and I guess we could coordinate the times, but no, actually that's not a problem.
Well, why don't we sit down and
Right, okay.
Why don't we sit down with staff, discuss the issue, also have the attorney's office work on a contract extending it for the year that we should have got the data rather than asking for the refund.
So we're going to rescind that letter and continue on and moving forward based on this motion?
Yeah, we'll probably bring an agreement back and also sit down with staff so we're all on the same page and we're all working together to get this accomplished.
Mr. Chairman.
I just wanted to point out that we withdrew from the cooperation with the collaborative, and I said it then on that day that we all discussed it, that Indian River is doing a lot more than other municipalities, other county governments in regard to our lagoon, and we have several projects in the works, and we have anticipated projects, and we have cutting-edge technology that's being applied now. We will be able to identify the outfalls and then concentrate our efforts independently. And Doc Woody, you said it earlier, they'll be looking at us for this data because we'll have it because you're bringing it to the table.
Yes,
So,
that meeting I went to in Tallahassee was organized by DEP because of their recognition of the fact that everybody needs to start to do real-time monitoring. So this was everybody they could find that was doing real-time monitoring statewide in order to share lessons learned. And there were a lot of people there that were using optical sensors that were clearly having trouble, and they were very interested in the fact that we were switching over to the wet chemistry system. Also sharing things like useful ways to avoid vandalism of your units was to make sure that your logo isn't shaped like a target.
We discussed that. There's a little bit of crime prevention application that you might want to look at.
Yeah.
Chairman, I'll second that motion.
Yes.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second, and then Commissioner Slaughter.
I'd rather we just move ahead with board consensus. The practice is not to take motions under presentations, and I believe that's a good practice. We're not properly noticed or anything like that. I believe the county administrator went ahead without a motion from us on the board, and I think we can move ahead just with the board consensus.
No, I think that's appropriate because we're voting. I mean, we don't have anything to vote in front of us for us to in writing. So let's go ahead and just move forward with consensus to have staff come back with an agreement that meets legal sufficiency. Okay?
That's fine. And just as far as the amount of staff, how many grab samples we're going to take, I just leave that to staff to an appropriate schedule of frequency and duration until you guys are comfortable with if you think it's coming up.
Yeah, we can work that out with.
Yeah. Is that okay with you? I know.
Yeah, that's yeah. Okay.
Another item, Mr. Chair. Ed, who would we or who could we task to do the in-depth analysis of the water column to figure out who's nitrogen, what's the source? Would that be something that we want to do as the county, collect them and send them off, or work with Orca? Because it's not was never part of the original agreement, so it's additional.
And that kind of goes back to what I was thinking as far as, until we get this hammered out and start to be able to answer this question, we can't start on the second question.
Right.
And so
That's a phase,
yes.
Okay.
and work on a phase 2.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Dr.
Thank you,
Witter.
gentlemen.
Thank you. All right. Gentlemen, if there's no further, we're going to take a brief recess then and reconvene in 10 minutes at 10:51.
2 hours to get the presentation.
You know.
about a week possibly. I don't know that. See how much the career burn. Yeah. Phosphorus or whatever.
No, he looks, well, you know, we're going to be here until about 11 or 12.
Let's get started.
Hit the gavel, they'll run.
Meeting will come back to order. We left off after finishing up on the presentations and proclamations. That moves us to the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting held February 10th, 2015.
Move approval.
Got a motion from Commissioner Flesch with a second from Commissioner O'Brien. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us to the information items. Is there anything anybody needs to discuss on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to point out the dedication out there at Blue Cypress Lake for Joe Middleton. That's March 16th at 10 a.m. And would certainly like to see a large crowd out there to celebrate all that Joe has done for the county out there.
Sounds great. Thank you.
And by the same token, item B is the No Trains Rally, Saturday, March 7th, by the citizensagainstthetrain.com. And we'd like to see a sizable crowd out there as well.
All right. That moves us to the consent agenda. Commissioners, is anything you'd like to have pulled?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item D.
As in D as in Delta. I would like to pull item N as in Nancy. Anything else, Commissioners?
Move as amended.
Is there anybody from the public that wishes to have? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to comment on it.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Wait.
On one of the pulled items?
What?
When we get to it, just hang on.
Not yet.
I can second it.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Flesher with a second from Commissioner
Of course, all the heavy lifting is on this side.
on that side. We're used to that. Absolutely.
We're trying to, well, we have a vacancy over there,
Go.
too.
And a second from Commissioner O'Brien, and to approve the consent agenda as amended. If there, anybody from the public want to make sure nothing else needs to be pulled? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us to item D. Commissioner Zort.
Yes, I'd like to bring up Hopewood House from the Children's Services to bring up her concerns with this item.
Okay. Welcome, Hope.
Hello. Yes. So this is Colleen Bonner, who represents the Johns Island Community Service League, and she also has some comments that came from Grand Harbor. But I want to make a couple of comments. I know you pulled, and I don't know the process for how these things work, but the fact that we got the information on the funding for children's services on Friday, those of us that would really want to give you an organized comment didn't have the time, so we'd like to have it moved to a future agenda, possibly March 17th or 24th, so that we can, as a group, give you our feelings, which our feelings are that the amount, keeping it flat, is not the right thing to do, and it should be increased. But while I'm up here, since I chaired the needs assessment, and actually think it should have been a presentation like the two that I listened to this morning, which were fascinating, and every member of our community should have listened to both of those. But I just want to give you three pieces of information. So we did the children's needs assessment. The last time we did it was 2006. So the funds that Children's Services allocated to children's issues in 2006 was $1.2 million. Today it's $623,000. It's been that for 3 years. That's a decrease of 50%. Yet, if you look at two indicators, first children's poverty and free and reduced lunch, in 2006, 16% of the children were living in poverty. Today it's 21%, so we have a 31% increase. On free and reduced lunch, again, the number of children on this, which is an indicator of poverty, is increased 30%. The priorities of the Children's Needs Assessment and the memo that was written are really focused on prevention. We're getting much, we're going to focus, if you look at the new RFP, really change the way that we look at things to first focus on whether or not we're dealing with best practices, nonprofits that are inefficient and doing things well. But when we look at the priorities, again, it's making sure that we get to children in the appropriate neighborhoods early to prevent poverty in the future, and much of this is through education. So if we're able to do this with these funds, it'll really have a positive impact on Indian River County and help the report that Janet just gave. Conversely, if we don't invest in this, it's going to have real negative outcomes for the county. So I just have sort of three questions for you all. So, and this came from the needs assessment. Would you want to move to a community that has as much poverty as we have here? Would you really want to come here? Would you want to come to the community that has the largest gap between rich and poor in the United States? Our Gini coefficient, which I'm sure you guys are all aware of, is the same as Honduras and Guatemala. So is Janet going to want to go out and market Indian River County saying, please come down here, you're coming to Honduras or Guatemala? So that's question number one. The other question is in her chart, which I thought was interesting. She talked about the education pool in the community. So one of the things I found in the needs assessment that was really disturbing is that if you break the population of 18 to 24-year-olds and 24 to 34-year-olds and 34 to 44-year-olds, our younger population in Indian River County is increasingly uneducated. So 21% of the population between 18 and 24 does not have a high school degree. 20.5% of the population, 25 to 34, does not have a high school degree. But the population 34 to 44, only 14% doesn't have a high school degree. So what's happening is the people that are living in the county and staying here who are going to do these jobs. It's not the old people or people like me that are going to take jobs with college degrees and things like that. It's the younger population. Again, what would she think? What would Janet think of that statistic? And then the last point I'd like to make is, what would the people coming to Florida and looking at Indian River County compared to the other counties around us, would they want to come to a community that invests so little in its children? We invest $623,000. Martin County invests $6 million. St. Lucie County invests $6 million. Again, why would you come here? And I think there's so many strategic things. We want jobs in this county. We want the county to do well. I live here. I care. But we're not going to fix this unless we focus on getting our kids able to get through high school and to college to break that cycle of poverty. So that's my comment.
All right, thank you.
I'm Colleen Bonner, and I'm on the executive board of the Service League. I act as treasurer, and I'm here to represent our league of 800 or so members, and we are fully in support of increased funding to the children's services in this county. And we come from a place of knowledge. This year we will give over $800,000 to the community, and a lot of it is directed towards early childhood education, poverty, for the exact same services that HOPE has identified as lacking. We have a large philanthropy committee. We're very familiar with just about every nonprofit in the community, and we have a very thorough vetting process. So we see the problems firsthand. And I've been asked to read a letter from the president of the Grand Harbor Community Outreach Program, who couldn't come today, and I will do that. On behalf of the Grand Harbor Community Outreach, a 501c3 that has contributed more than $2.5 million to help Indian River counties less fortunate, I want to communicate our full support of increasing the county funding of children's services, at the very least reflecting the 4.5% increase in taxable value. Grand Harbor is a community of over 1,000 households. Most are local voters. As president of Community Outreach, I've had my board of directors and philanthropy committee study the recently published 2014 Indian River County Children's Needs Assessment, and we are putting into actions those programs that we can help support through private funding and volunteerism. We firmly believe that to address the areas of chronic poverty in this county, we need to address the critical areas of early childhood development, parenting, health care, and enrichment programs for older youth. And we firmly believe that every dollar invested early will avoid much larger downstream costs to our taxpayers and society. In our opinion, no issue is of more strategic importance to this county than the health, education, and welfare of its young citizens. Solving short-term budget pressures by reducing the percentage of funds allocated to our children is short-sighted. We heartily recommend that you approve the modest increase of funding this year and take a long-term look towards finding ways of fully meeting the needs so well articulated in the recent report. Sincerely, Suzanne Sweeney, President of Grand Harbor Community Outreach.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want to say one thing about, I want to just answer one of your questions.
Go ahead and turn your light on then.
Would you want to come to a community that invests so little in its children? I mean, my answer to that is this community invests a tremendous amount in its children. And I consider investments by individuals who do it voluntarily actually a better investment than an investment by the county spending tax dollars doing it. I mean, a couple of the comments that the lady before you just mentioned was the amount of money that Grand Harbor spends on it. Johns Island spends millions and millions a year. The Boys and Girls Club mentioned that in 10 years they've raised $20 million. The fact of the matter is, I'm happy to come to this community because our citizens understand what it takes to build a community, and that is sometimes individuals stepping up and not relying on the government. And I think that it's much, much better to get the $20 or $30 or $40 million a year voluntarily from the citizens of this community than it is to tax everybody for it and let the government try to spend the money the way it believes. I believe that the money spent through philanthropies is much better utilized than the money that the county raises through taxes and spends. Just because you have passionate people who are doing what they believe is absolutely right. So I just didn't want to anybody listening to this meeting go away with the idea that this community invests little from its children. If you take what the public sector and the private sector gives, I'd match our community against any community in the state of Florida on a per capita basis.
So I would, I guess, strongly disagree with that, because not coming up, we haven't done a good job of this. I mean, clearly, look at the numbers. All you have to do is read the Children's Needs Assessment. But if you go to the needs assessment, one of the things that did talk about, and why are we failing on all of this? Well, we haven't had good collaboration. Collaboration is starting in, for instance, the Learning Alliance and the Mood Shop Moment has really made tremendous change. And we have to support that collaboration. But I don't know how you could possibly have a government, your government, that was not carrying a positive flag for this. And I mean, and the only way that you demonstrate that is through how much you allocate to it. And the other thing is, we don't have enough money. I mean, there needs to be more money. We have a few people, supporting a lot of these organizations. There's always the 80-20 rule. But I mean, we need a lot more. We need a lot more contribution to all of this, and I'm not just talking, from you guys, but across the whole community. And so it's my intention over the next year or so to really educate the community on the situation, so that people know that this is like Honduras. I mean, honestly, our Gini coefficient is that of Honduras and Guatemala, and we have to fix that problem. I mean, knowing that. Our population, 20% of the people who are going to be having babies and filling jobs don't have a high school degree. We got to fix that. And my opinion, the only way to fix that is get to kids early, educate them so they show up for kindergarten ready to learn, and that you get them to third grade and they can read to understand. Because if you have an educated population, that breaks the cycle of poverty. I mean, that's really the only thing you can do.
Well, again, we probably have a lot of ideological differences on this one. I'll just use the idea of, say, charter schools and public schools. I think that a lot of federal programs basically undermine a lot of what we might want to be doing, and that we need to not necessarily throw more money at everything, especially government dollars on it, but rather renovate our programs. Most statistics I've seen show that charter schools educate a lot better than a lot of public schools at half to a third of the cost, because they do things differently, and they do things which reinforce the family unit rather than disincentivize the family unit, which is what a lot of public programs end up doing.
So actually, you're speaking to somebody who's an expert on charter schools. I've sat on a foundation board in New York that has basically seeded the top charters in New York City, and I'm actually the liaison to Harlem Children's Zone. So the one thing they don't have in New York, and why they have to do charters, is they have a terrible relationship with the school district. The unions in New York are 100 times worse than our unions here. So in Indian River County, the current superintendent and her staff are the most collaborative people our school district I have ever seen. And again, I've been working on this for 20 years before I got to Vero Beach. So the reason you create charters is because you have de Blasios in New York and people that aren't paying attention. We don't have that. I mean, we're okay. Our schools and our leadership of the schools are okay. What we really need to do is make sure we find a good replacement for Ann Adams, because she's collaborating with the Learning Alliance. Her staff is collaborating with me on all of the kindergarten readiness. There is a public-private partnership there. So I'm not sure charter schools will fix that, because it would be to erode the relationship we have with the school district. And there are things we can do to provide money to some of the specific schools, like a charter. But charters were put in place to pull kids from the public schools, and we don't want to. I mean, we have a good thing going right now.
Mr. Chairman, I think the request I'll make is, when we get to this, is to bring this item back as a department item for the March 24th meeting so that your group has more time to prepare and actually have it as a presentation either by department or by and a presentation in the beginning, one or the other, whatever is the best place to put it. If that gives you enough time.
That would be great. Thank you.
And I'd see if there's anybody else that wants to speak on it.
Bob, you want to say something?
Good morning, Commissioners. Bob McParland, with Community Development Administrator for the Department of Children and Families, as well as City of Sebastian Council Member. I sit on the Children's Services Advisory Committee. I took part in the Children's Needs Assessment, the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment. We live in Indian River County, which is an extremely wealthy county, an extremely giving community too, and they have. What we're looking at is we need a little bit more money in the funding. It's not to throw good money after bad, because I don't believe in that either. We're looking to give people help, a hand up, not a hand out. And we work with a lot of tremendous organizations which we are able to fund with grants that are out there doing tremendous work, such as the Homeless Family Center, Children's Home Society, and a lot of the early learning coalitions that work with children, the Substance Abuse Council. We've done a lot. But we have lacked in supporting that through the county over the couple of years. We were stagnant. There was a downturn. We're looking to increase the funding because those organizations can go out with those grants and leverage that money even further than they could through private donations. Through the government, they can leverage those grants to get additional money, and that's what we're looking to do. And if you look in, you've all been provided in the past the executive summary of the Children's Needs Assessment. Just read it. It's very important. We're looking to do more for our children. There's no greater resource in Indian River County than our children. We talk about the lagoon. We're talking about the train. Our kids are falling behind, and we need to support them, and we need to shine them up and polish them up. And all I'm looking for is a little additional funding. I don't know what the magic number is. $700,000 seems like a fair number to me. But if we come back later, and Ms. Woodhouse will bring forward a lot more information by just keep an open ear to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. So you're good with the 24th then? Are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else wish to speak from the public? Okay. Freddie, welcome.
Good morning. Freddie Woolfolk, 4590 57th Avenue, Vero Beach, Florida. I'm just standing today just to make mention of the great work that goes on in Indian River County because of the various agencies that you have established to look over that particular medium, whether it's our children, whether it's water, whether it's utilities. We have agencies established. The Children's Services Network, believe it or not, I've been around now with the nonprofit, with the Gifted Youth Achievement Center now almost 18 years, and I've been very closely associated with the Children's Services Network and how they are a group of people who just don't say, tell me how much you want, I'll give it to you, see you next time you ask for more money. But no, this group, Mr. Brad Brunhauser and others, bring that particular committee together, and nonprofits in Indian River County have the opportunity to show some of the goals they want to achieve, and they must have measurable objectives and make sure they show budgetary restraints in areas of not just spending just to be spending. So you have some great check and balances here through the Children's Services Network, a great opportunity to show that we are being proactive and making sure that our children receive great attention. I was very elated and enthused with the reports of the first two presenters this morning, with the one talking about the water, which I learned a lot about this morning, and in the other presentation. And that to me is being proactive to make sure that we do have drinking water for the future. They're making, and that same thing should be done toward our children, making sure we do have good employees to take those jobs that we are talking about coming to the county later. You can do all the infrastructure development, you can bring in all the big businesses, but we don't have children who can grow up to be educated, to get a college degree, to come back to fill those jobs. People from Brevard County, other counties, St. Lucie County, would take the jobs that our kids would sit on the sideline and watch. So I'm saying here that you have a great tool in line, you have great people here to do great work with our children, which is our most precious resource. I just hope that you would take a look at the budget and make sure that we can get the appropriate funding so that those programs that are doing a good job, that are helping our children, do have the resources to do so. So I'll be back again just to give a little bit more input on the 24th, but I ask that you consider that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Freddie. Any other questions or anybody else from the public wish to speak?
Just would the 17th work as well? There's an outside chance I may not be here on the 24th.
But I'd also look at, we meet the first 3 Tuesdays, right?
We meet the first Tuesday of every month with the exception of the last Tuesday, so depending on if there's 5 Tuesdays or 4 Tuesdays.
Which there is 5, okay. I'd leave that up to the...
We'd like to get the numbers set so when the committee meets, otherwise they've got a number that they fund the agencies to. That's why we're trying to do it right in the month, in this month.
Did you follow the... Okay.
So that's fine.
Right.
Okay.
So Commissioner Zorc made a motion?
That's fine. Revise the motion to move item D to the March 17th meeting.
Second. With discussion.
To postpone this until the 17th and either have it under the department that it belongs in or under presentation.
That's my understanding.
And Ms. Woodhouse, if you just
as long as Commissioner Solari will let us vote under presentations.
I think it ought to be in the department that it moves up to, and then we can just move it up to presentations. I think that would be the appropriate way to do it.
Similar to the way we did the other.
Yeah.
But leave the concept as a departmental matter.
Right.
Correct.
So we can vote on it.
Is there any further
I don't want to hit that loophole again.
Seeing no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your time. Sorry this drug out so long. All right. That moves us to the next item of the consent agenda, which is item N. And basically, Commissioners, this is just the Sector 3 dune repair project, partial release of retainage for Together Brothers Construction. And the reason why I pulled this is because in the eyes of the legislature, they consider a brother a relative, and therefore I need to abstain. So that's all.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Solari with a second from Commissioner Flesher.
I know you barely get a motion over there, but...
Yes. Is there any further discussion? Anybody from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes 4-0 with Commissioner Davis dissenting. Or, excuse me, abstaining. Thank you. Abstaining, yes. Okay. Next is constitutional officers. I don't see the sheriff here, but here we go. Better. He left the A team here. All right, super.
Sorry,
welcome.
We had another appointment. Amber Career, Planner, Grant Manager for the Sheriff's Office.
Commissioners, you got any questions?
Move approval.
Got a motion from Commissioner Flesher with a second from Commissioner Solari to approve the Florida Traffic Safety Grant funded by the Florida Department of Transportation. Letter dated February 23rd, 2015, found on pages 183 through 196 in your backup. If there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move the Victims Crime Act grant application.
That motion passes unanimously. Next, we have the motion from Commissioner Flesher with the second from Commissioner Solari, second from Commissioner Flesher for the Victims of Crime Act VOCA grant application. Letter dated February 23rd, 2015, found on pages 197 through 238 in your backup. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Great presentation.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
That moves us to the public discussion items, and which is we have a request to speak from Mr. Chad Smalley and Mr. Sammy Smith. I don't see Sam here. Sam not here today? All right.
Somebody got to.
Somebody. I appreciate him doing that. Indian River County Airboat Association regarding hunter education youth hunt on the Sand Lake tracks, and found it on pages 239 through 245 in your backup. Mr. Smalley, welcome.
Chad Smalley with Indian River County Airboat Association, current president. Today we are asking for the county to let us conduct youth hunter safety as well as youth hunts on the property that the county owns, along with St. John's Water Management, the Sand Lake track. Our airboat club, about 5 years ago, we put this program together with FWC. Since then, we've got 10 hunt masters in the club. We've got 15 hunt guides have all been certified by FWC, State of Florida. Spent weekends up in Ocala learning how to take care of these youths. We've so far to date we've done 31 youth hunts with 175 boys and girls, the ages of 10 to 17 years old. Right now, I'm proud to say that our club is we're batting 100% with this deal.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for this program and for all that you and everybody else does. Going back to the last item on the children's services, I tend to believe that this type of program is worth $10 or more for every taxpayer dollar that goes into any program. I mean, you're doing things from conversations I've had with you that instill the right type of values into our children and teach them some very important lessons. I mean, we have a Second Amendment right to have guns, but that can be a dangerous right if we don't know how to use them. And you all help people understand, boys and girls, how to understand how to use them correctly. And I thank you for that, because that makes, in my view, our Constitution that much stronger. So I think this is a great program. Another thing that I think in this county realize is that we have a lot of conservation lands, but we also don't utilize them enough because we don't have the resources. And as I understand it, you're only looking to basically close off some of this land to the public twice a year for 2 hunts, which will help our youth in a very substantive manner. So to make the long and short of it, I'd just like to not have a motion today because this is public comment, but direct the county administrator to work with the county attorney to come up with the proper document which will come before this board as soon as possible and allow this to happen, and to suggest that anything that the county rec department can do to facilitate it that's reasonable, we ought to consider as part of that.
Absolutely. And I see we have the city manager of Fellsmere. And Jason, just to make sure that this obviously takes place in the city of Fellsmere, or we're going to need a lot of cooperation with you anyhow to be able to access and that kind of stuff. Just make sure that you and the city council are leaning in favor of something like this.
Yeah, we're 100% on board. To echo the commissioner's comments, they do a lot, the Airboat Club for the city, the Santa Ride, these youth hunts. It's tremendous, the support they provide the city. St. Lake Tract is in unincorporated county, but it's surrounded by the city. So one of the things we'd like to do is help work out the access issues. My conversation with St. John's, they don't have an issue with this, but there's been some problems getting that connection. Sure. So I'd like to resolve that. That's a concern for us because we view the Sand Lake Tract as being a huge opportunity, not just for these youth hunts, but to serve its mission and the management program that's to date been unfulfilled. So we'd like to be a part of making it happen.
This is something that's near and dear to me because clearly I was raised on the weekends with my dad in the woods and do it, hunt and fish with my daughter and enjoy the outdoors. And for the opportunity for children that don't have either access to it or parents that have the knowledge about it, it really is something I think is commendable. And so good luck with it. And whatever we do put forth, I say we work closely with the city of Fellsmere on this, even in the language. In fact, I wouldn't have a problem with us if there's a way of us just letting Fellsmere become the lead on this. I don't know that we need 2 government agencies working on it. I know it's county property, but so whatever we need to do to be able to make this happen as seamless as possible, I don't think we need to over-engineer it.
I have one question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, then.
Also, I see the request is for 2 times a year. If we're going to put a document out there, do we want to maybe make it 4 times a year? So if you have a reason to have a special one for a third, you don't have to come back and.
That's totally up to you all. I mean, we this year we did 8 hunts, and we're going to be doing our 8th hunt in April, or I believe it's turkey. But so with the volunteers that we have, we're stacked. But we definitely, if there's opportunity there and we have the the volunteers to do it, absolutely. So far we have quite a bit.
So maybe just so that they wouldn't have to come back if they had a need.
Sure.
To do something, maybe say up to 4 without having to come back to visit with them.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. I've received a template that's been used by Alachua County and Florida Fish and Wildlife that they use for certain days of hunts. So it would be very easy for our office to go ahead and plug in any dates that they may wish to use as far as in this lease agreement. There's a hold harmless agreement in there. It's just a simple document that we can tailor to make it work as your pleasure.
I tell you what, we've got a private landowners, actually a group of them, Blackwater Creek, which is Todd Fennell and Cooksey, and I don't know all of them personally, but I do know a few of them. And they read that agreement. They said it's probably one of the best written, simple agreements. You probably have read it before too, but so I am glad for FWC to finally get something.
Yes.
Be done. Yep.
Super. Okay, Commissioner Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many of you, I've met with the members of the association, and I just wanted to point out that it was a rather intense discussion. It wasn't about just going out into the woods and hunting. And I also wanted to point out that there was a time where the sheriff's office did not have the opportunity to have an airboat, and in their time of need at any time, that there was tremendous amount of airboats at the disposal of the sheriff's office, and that was by way of the members of the Airboat Association. And I know that I, for one, being out there in the swamp, truly appreciated that. And that's coming from this New York City accent. It was on uncharted grounds. In addition, I wanted to point out to the public that this is not about simply hunting in uncharted land. These guys do this on a regular basis in other venues, and our discussion was completely enshrouded with safety and security and the welfare of the children, with parental involvement and a partnership and a contract. They feed them, they look out for every aspect. This is not just about going out to the woods, and this is all about hunting safety, familiarization, and I was rather impressed by the scope and nature of their presentation as well. I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Two things. One is last year St. Lucie County had their hog hunt, and we opened up the landfill to allow it. And I don't know if we want to include use out in the landfill if you need another site, but maybe consider that. And then speaking of the hunt, we all know that Commissioner Solari sponsored a team in that hunt. And my understanding is they didn't do very well, so maybe you guys could give them a quick course, a little hunter education, and maybe they'll do better next year. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, my team was a little disappointed this year. Yeah.
Especially when a trapper came like the next week and got like 150.
Sometimes it just helps to get
They'll do even better with bringing traps next year.
Well, you can understand why I'm supporting the next generation of shooters.
All right, that sounds good. We'll put something together, Chad, and we'll put it, have it back together for next meeting.
All right, thank you all.
Super, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Next, we have the public notice item, C1, and I will let the county attorney read this. Dylan?
C1.
Thank you very much. We have one public notice item. It's the notice of scheduled public hearing for March 10th, 2015. This is to consider a water line to be installed from 13580, including 13680 to 13680 North Indian River Drive, also known as Riverside Drive in Indian River County, Florida. This is a memorandum dated February 17, 2015. Again, this will be a public hearing that will be held on March 10th, 2015. Thank you very much. With that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. We have no county attorney matters, and we've already taken care of departmental matters under community development. So that what's that?
No attorney matters? No.
County administrators.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That moves us all the way down to departmental matters under utility services. The spoon bill update. Mr. Burke, welcome.
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We have before you an update to the Spoonbill Reef, otherwise known as the Oyster Pilot Project. Back on July 16th of 2013, the board here today approved a pilot project to install some concrete rubble, about a quarter acre in size, a little bit more so on a three-dimensional aspect. About 3 months later, around October 2013, with Charlie Sembler, and to my left, Chip Swindell, who's here with Ecotech, our consultant on the project, and with staff Art Pfeffer, they managed to complete the construction of the Oyster Reef project. So the purpose of the meeting today is to bring some information back to the board, giving an update of some of the surveys that were conducted in December of 2013, and then a follow-up survey in July of 2014, and also to ask for board consideration at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Chip Swindell, who's with Ecotech, to give some more information about the process and what he has been able to find over this year-plus long process, and an update to the board regarding that project. Chip.
Actually, I have turn your little microphone there on. Yep. Actually, I have a couple of oyster-related projects to talk about today. The first being what we're calling the Spoonbill Marsh Oyster Reef. The reef has continued to grow, if you will. 100% of the surface area of the concrete that was placed out there is covered by something. The oyster population is continuing to expand. We have what I call turf algae pretty much over everything, including the oysters. Game fish are moving across the reef in large numbers, but I don't want to imply that they're there all the time. They're coming and going across the reef. There's, and I hesitate to use the word that they're resident fish, but the interior of the reef now is providing refuge or habitat for a number of the smaller, what we normally refer to as bait fish, and that the reef is now, or has been ever since we started it up, supporting larger invertebrates such as crabs. So from an overall perspective, it has successfully done what one of the main design features were, which was to provide habitat for organisms in the lagoon. And based on our numbers that we're getting for the oysters that we're taking out of Spoonbill Marsh, we did try to do enclosures on small pieces of concrete that had oysters on them to figure out what the nutrient uptake rate was. But their respiration rate was high enough that they pretty much exhausted the oxygen in the enclosure, and that created a problem, obviously, for continuing with the experiment. So everything that we've done up to this point has been done in Spoonbill Marsh and enclosures in Spoonbill Marsh, as opposed to out on the reef for obvious reasons. But at this point, the oysters are taking up a fairly high amount of nitrogen and phosphorus. I had a chance to go up to Tallahassee and talk to DEP about the nutrient uptake rates, and there was someone there who spent a good bit of time working in the Chesapeake Bay, and the numbers that they were getting out of Chesapeake Bay are actually higher than the ones that we were getting on the reef. So further testing may demonstrate that over longer periods of time that you may generate greater nutrient removals, but I think that what at the end of the day you'll see is that they cycle through the year depending on water temperature and some other factors that are in their habitat. This is the general location of the reef. This is, you can actually see the reef here with the four corners marked. So, like I said, from a habitat perspective, it has been what I would consider highly successful in attracting fish to that area. And it doesn't appear that the water quality has had any negative effect, turbidity, DO, or anything else on the organisms in or around that reef. On another subject, the 45th Street Oyster Reef that I think I've talked to you about previously. Right now, DEP has all the information they need except for one bit, and that is the load coming through the drainage, the FDOT drainage ditch that discharges into the river at about the 45th Street dot. So we have the cross-section of the canal completed, and if it ever rains again, sufficient amount of flow that we can get through there, we can take those readings and chase up TMDL money for that one. And just in general, that's, to refresh your memory, that's where the reef is generally located. And I don't have a pointer here, I do. The water quality samples will be taken somewhere in this area right here so that we're getting, and I don't know if you know, but that ditch goes all the way back up US 1 to the north side of Grand Harbor's property, so it takes up a pretty large drainage area. One of the things that we're proposing to do that would greatly help with this issue of how much nitrogen and how much phosphorus can an oyster remove from the water column is that we're proposing to put a test pond at Spoonbill Marsh. The parking lot is right here, and the test pond would be between the parking lot and Pond 1 right there. We're talking to the state of Florida once again, and they're looking at 100% funding on this, so we're not asking for any money to implement this project if the state steps forward and funds this. But what this will do is allow us to put enclosures out there without tops on them so they're not submerged. That's not going to attract wildlife to that particular point. It's going to hopefully minimize the wildlife interference with these studies and allow us to get a more long-term study than what we've been able to do so far in the Spoonbill Marsh. So the overall goal with this is, number one, kind of a little bit self-serving to allow us to get a better understanding of what the oysters are actually doing out there, but also to invite the high schools to come out and use the pond as an outdoor learning center. They could conduct experiments or just follow along with what we're doing. And lastly, the Eco Tour at Spoonbill is going to be Saturday, March 14th from 8 to 2. And we'd like everyone that's interested to come out and go on a guided tour of what's going on there.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Sloan.
Chip, could you give me a rough estimate of how many square feet that test pond is?
How many square feet? I think it's 2,400.
Okay, thanks. And the high school students will be able to do tests on it then? And
the reason that we're proposing this is because with Spoonbill having alligators and other things out there, the schools, because of liability, can't use the marsh overall to do studies or for science projects. But this will be a controlled environment. It's only a foot, 1.25 feet deep on average, and
will it be a raised, or is it going to be lined, or just a pond?
No, the water elevation at that point is high enough so that we don't need to line it.
Okay.
But at any rate, we'll set up studies. For example, right here, this will slope down from the edge, from basically 0 feet down to 2 feet, so you can do plant community experiments. We'll have over here, for example, what amounts to is a ring of plants with the interior diameter being about 4 feet that would allow us to look at the filtration of solids in the water column that are going through the plant communities. And the same thing with this area here. We would plant them starting at relatively sparse densities, like 2 or 3 foot centers, and watch how the plants compete with each other for not just the substrate space, but also along a water depth profile. So it would open up any number of opportunities for experiments, but in reality, it allows us to take, like I said, a lot closer look at what the oysters are doing water quality-wise than we can do in a bigger site.
I think that's wonderful, especially if we can get the students there often. And I guess I'll note that if there are enough alligators, then we can bring the Indian River Airboat Club to have a shoot there on alternate weekends to harvest them. So a lot of possibilities there. And I also guess this is just an assumption on my point. I guess the high school students would be able to do, say, more and better experiments on this portion of Spoonville Marsh than they could, say, on a deep injection well.
Yes, because we're going to have water pumped in from Pond 1, which is where the influent comes in, to this point here, and it'll flow across here. So they can do, in essence, the same type of water sampling, if you will, or plant studies or wildlife studies that are being conducted in Spoonville without actually having to go out.
Well, that sounds to me like a wonderful addition to the facility.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments?
Do you need a motion to proceed with the application for this? So moved.
Second. Got a motion from Commissioner Solari, second from Commissioner Flesher. Mr. DeBraw.
Mr. Chairman, the county's interest in this property is by easement for the Spoonville Marsh project. This sounds like it might be in need of maybe an addition or amendment to the easement, as long as to provide it. It's my understanding also that in drafting the easement, there were terms of notice when we were going to have things occurring out at the Spoonville Marsh, like the tour that's going to be done, just as long as Grand Harbor is notified, that will satisfy the terms of the easement.
Super.
That'd be part of the motion.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just for the Saturday the 14th, we have reached out on several occasions to Mr. Clary to let them know that we would be coming out there. The Indian River Land Trust is having their annual site visit on the 13th, but certainly we can look at any modification to the existing agreement that would satisfy Grand Harbor.
Super. Thank you. Okay. If there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That motion was made by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. All right, that moves us next to demolition, county attorney matters with demolition liens. Mr. DeBraw, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. I believe it's still morning time. Yes, it is indeed. We've got demolition liens set to go. These properties have all been demolished and cleaned up already. The liens that are, or the cost of the demolitions are noted on the board memo to the Commissioners. This is an opportunity for anyone affected by the liens that are going to be placed on the property to object as to the amount of the liens. So if the chairman would simply sound the audience for any comment. If not, staff's recommendation is to go forward with the lien amounts as indicated.
Is there anybody from the audience that wishes to comment on any of the demolition liens for the properties? We've got three of them here, and I'll go ahead and I'll give well, some of them don't have the address.
There are 7 total.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
All right. Anybody here wish to speak on the demolition liens? If not, we can take care of this with all one motion. Is that good? All right.
Move staff recommendations.
Got a motion from Commissioner Solari with a second from Commissioner Flesher to move staff recommendation to approve the demolition liens of the subject properties found on pages 283 through 299 in your backup. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Commissioners.
All right, and we've pulled item B under county attorney matters. Moves us to item C for resolution allocating funding in opposition to All Aboard Florida.
Thank you very much to the chair and to those left of you in the audience and those watching at home. On February 17th, this board had authorized the county attorney to work specifically with Commissioner Solari on drafting a resolution that would be useful in our attempt to attack the private activity bonds. Worked with Commissioner Solari, drafted that resolution. It is in your backup. It is in your materials. Merely recommend that you open up this item for public comment and then vote whether you want to approve the resolution. I did include in there a call to other local governments to have them support either financially or politically in our endeavor to fight the All Aboard Florida proposed passenger rail project. With that, I turn it over back to the chair.
Commissioners, any questions or comments?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner.
I think each of us received a summary from the budget office that we've expensed. I think it's $283,000 so far, which really puts our dedication to this effort at over $3 million. after we had our meeting on February 17th, I had seen Martin County did 1.4 or 1.5 million. I don't think, and also on the 283,000, that does not include the pending billing from Neighbors Giblin, which I think would be separate from that, which is another 20.
I know initially this board had authorized the use of up to $25,000. I know we had an initial bill of roughly about $5,000. I don't. Obviously, after that, I don't know.
Right. Okay. So they're still ongoing. I don't think any counties made that initial. Well, with that additional 25 on the 283 puts us at over 300,000. I don't. In my reading the information on this issue, I don't think the other counties have ponied up 300,000 in advance, or as well as what we have. And I didn't know if there was a reason why Martin County only did 1.4 or 5, considering they're a bigger county, more people, as much or greater resources than what we have available. If anybody just happens to know why they did his request was for 1.4 or 5. I didn't know why they requested a smaller amount than us.
I think we approached it differently. I mean, when I was thinking about Commissioner O'Brien's question about how much we'd be willing to spend here, during the process of months, I just came up with the thought that 1% of our budget was a reasonable amount. I can't speak for Commissioner Haddox's development up to that point, but I think that, again, thinking of the City of Vero Beach electric issue, they spent over 10% of their budget so far and are continuing to spend funds. So in my mind, 1% was a very reasonable amount to protect our community from what I think many of us feel is an existential threat. So that's probably as much as you can do there.
I guess it's more of their smaller number than our.
Well, I mean, and they've never said that that's all they're going to spend.
Right.
But I will note that the private sector in Martin County has already raised and almost spent $500,000.
Okay.
And so, the things all in all balance out. So I think that they've done a fair job. And I do know that some people are trying to engage the St. Lucie County Commission a little more. But again, I don't think we can, I wouldn't risk Indian River County on what other counties would do in such an issue. Right. I'm hoping that our leadership will lead to them stepping up. But our community is threatened, and I think we need to do what we need to do to protect it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I could add a little bit to Commissioner Zork's question. I think it was back in October, there was a Florida Association of Counties legislative meeting, and during that meeting, County Administrator Baird and Assistant County Attorney Kate Cotner and myself met with the Martin County Attorney, the Martin County Administrator, and I think it was the St. Lucie County Administrator. And we had an initial discussion about forming together to raise a legal fund. And at that time, the discussion was each county to put in $1 million. And
I kind of remember.
So that kind of where that got started. Now, with Commissioner Solari's motion, we far exceeded that initial number, and Martin County, even at 1.4, has exceeded that initial number. Obviously, we would love to have St. Lucie County come on board, but so that's kind of where the genesis of those numbers was, and so it just kind of has worked out a little different from there.
And will these funds with the other counties' funds, whoever else joins in, we all would be hiring the same firm for the same objective, or do we not? Or they may go one way, we may go completely another way?
There are a couple different things that we're looking at right now. First off, there was the initial hire with the Neighbors Giblin law firm.
Right.
And what that idea was is that all three counties would essentially get the same sort of information as to our opportunities, our legal rights, our responsibilities, our options, and that was kind of going to be just a general across the board. But certainly going forward, it's my understanding that we're each going to be hiring our own either attorneys or whatever the expertise is, so that we can move forward to protect our own individual interest in the event a county goes their own way or whatnot.
Right.
So it's not a combined $4.1 million
that's what I was.
That we're all going to be pulling from.
I mean, it seems like there'd be a synergistic value if we all were going for the same goal with the same firm with the same objectives because we're all kind of impacted. I mean, they have different impacts, but we're all impacted.
Well, and I can say to that issue is I know we're all working hard to make sure that we're collaborating, that we're not overlapping on our efforts so that different people are kind of working on different issues. So I can certainly say that we are working very hard to make sure that we are all on the same page in terms of the issues. But I think it's important that we have a firm that represents our interest in the event interests for some reason get unaligned in the future.
Right, okay. All right, that's all that I have. Okay. Thank you.
In that case, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to move the resolution and ask the county attorney to disseminate it to all groups that he feels appropriate.
So seconded.
Got a motion from Commissioner Solari to direct the county attorney to draft the resolution, and a second from Commissioner Flesher. Any further discussion or anybody from the public wish to address this issue? Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Sharon Kohler, 545 Honeysuckle Lane, Vero Beach. I'd just like to make a comment that that large an amount of money with an yet to be itemized budget sounds okay to me. I don't have a problem with that, except I would suggest that you subtract $20,000 and support the sheriff in his request for upgraded laundry supplies. I was really surprised when I heard the last meeting that I went to and he explained how many loads of laundry and all of that, and how many years it's been since he's updated, and he needed $20,000 and you turned him down.
No, ma'am, that's not the case. No, it passed.
No, he did get the
He did approve
funding.
his request.
Okay.
He got the funding.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to address this issue? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to approve the resolution. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next, that moves us to item D, which is the appeal of the Public Service Commission rulings. Dylan.
Thank you very much. On February 3rd, the Public Service Commission had voted to deny issuing a declaratory statement to the county. At the same time and at the same meeting, the Public Service Commission had voted to grant a declaratory statement to the City of Vero Beach. This is obviously all concerning the City of Vero Beach electric utility and its relationship to our franchise agreements. The PSC orders were issued on February 12th per the directive of the order. If it's an electric utility issue, any appeal would be taken directly to the Florida Supreme Court. The county would have 30 days in which to file its appeal. I calendar that out to roughly either March 13th or March 16th. It would most likely be that weekend, therefore March 16th would be our filing date. Therefore, I just wanted to come back to this commission to get the will of this board to whether we wanted to file a notice of appeal. Just so you can sort of outline the timing. If we do file a notice of appeal, there'd be about a 70-day window in which we'd be working on a brief which we would file. They would need to be filed by May 22nd. Responses would then be due in mid-June. Our reply brief, if any, would then be due in mid-July. I would anticipate that we would request oral argument and that would be granted, and we could expect an oral argument probably in the first quarter of 2016. You could expect the oral argument and the court to issue an opinion anytime 6 to 9 months afterward. This is not a quick process. You would be looking at sometime around the third quarter or fourth quarter of 2016 to have maybe a final decision from the Supreme Court. As I've indicated in my memo, certainly wanted to be honest with the board about any costs. There's a $300 filing fee and an estimated $80,000 of legal fees that would be needed in order to draft a notice of appeal, initial brief, respond to any amicus briefs, file a reply, prepare for oral argument, and present oral argument over the next, as I described, probably a year and a half. At this point, honestly, I think, I can't really say whether we win or lose on appeal. It wouldn't really be appropriate, but I could certainly say that there are some issues I feel are legitimate to raise, certainly in the context of, and it's certainly not as, not limited to just these, but certainly an idea where the county was essentially told by the PSC, we're not going to issue you a declaratory statement because it would be an advisory legal opinion, because it affects another court case, because we don't issue opinions that affect third parties, while at the same time an order was specifically granted to the city of Vero Beach that stated, notwithstanding anything that the county does, here is your right and obligation to serve. It's just the two orders sitting next to each other are just quite interesting. With that respect, I don't think you lose anything with filing the appeal and prosecuting it. I mean, you've got a decision from the PSC. It would be binding upon the county, and the only way to overturn that would be hopefully through a favorable decision by the Supreme Court. With that, I turn it over. So thus, we would recommend that you do file it and turn it over to the board if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. And obviously would be willing to listen to and want to hear any other comments from the public.
Commissioners, any questions? Yes, Commissioner Zort.
Being there at that hearing when it took place, that they kind of ruled one way against us and in favor of them, at the same time kind of making the case contradictory to each other. I would think they would know that they intentionally did that. And I don't know, in the appeal process, this is probably one of those things that's never happened per se before, with the uniqueness that we have with our relationship with the city. So if we go forward and we're successful, could the appeals court say, well, just go back to the PSC and have them break it into two separate decisions and end up with the same decision? Or would we ask for something more significant? Or once you open up the appeal, what good and bad can come from it?
Well, right now I can tell you we do have two separate decisions.
Okay.
There was a specific order issued in the city's docket,
right,
and there was a specific order issued in the county's docket. With that regards, on appeal, you see all sorts of things. I've seen cases get remanded for further reconsideration by the lower court or the lower board. I've seen courts specifically say on appeal, look, as a matter of law, we're going to overturn that decision completely and rule in favor of the losing party. And then obviously I've seen just flat out, I'm sorry, you lose, and you lost at PSC, and you lose again in front of us. All those options are out there. I can tell you, looking at the two decisions we've got, I can't envision an outcome that would be worse situation than them issuing them a declaratory statement and them declaring ours not proper to be answered.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions or comments, Commissioners? Okay, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move recommendation that we move forward with the notice of appeal.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien with a second from Commissioner Zort to move forward with the notice of appeal. And one question. Yes, Commissioner Zort.
Mr. Chairman, would the current the firm that was at the PSC hearing be the one that would create the appeal, or do we use a separate firm for appeal process?
I'm actually currently analyzing that. I spoke with Mr. Self just the other day about that issue. I know Mr. Self has actually argued several times in front of the Supreme Court. There are multiple issues. You could, one, hire a firm that is an appellate firm and run with them. But then your issue on that is, maybe they don't have the PSC experience in the background to be able to handle a specific issue. While, continuing with Mr. Self, he's had an opportunity to argue before the Supreme Court before, and I thought that was important. There's also the idea that you don't want to change horses midstream or reteach up somebody. So those are some of the different things that we're analyzing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody from the public wish to address this issue? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the appeal signify with aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That should... Nope, there is one more. Okay. The impasse hearing then for the In River County Firefighter Paramedic Association memorandum dated on February 23rd, 2015, found on pages 311 in your backup.
And I want to thank the board for allowing me to bring this item forward today. As you're probably aware of the history, the county and management and its union with regards to the firefighters had been in negotiations concerning a collective bargaining agreement. There was a impasse that was entered or declared. A special magistrate had its hearings October 9th and October 10th. After that, the magistrate issued his rulings in December 19th. I know those were clarified in emails that were issued to the two parties on January 5th. On January 26th, I emailed this Board of County Commissioners to let you know that the installation period had begun. Since that time, I've worked hard with both sides, both management attorneys and with the attorneys for the union, on trying to set a date for the final impasse hearing in front of this board. Initially, because we were struggling with dates through that entire period, I essentially said, look, we need to hear this sometime soon. Let's go with March 6th or March 9th. I know the union was uncomfortable moving forward with both of those dates. I had a conference call after that with both attorneys. The attorneys had agreed to several dates. Two of those were not possible due to commissioner conflicts. There was one date that was possible. That was March 20th, but it was the date of a Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council meeting. And then I asked for both sides to present April dates and work with the board's calendars for that. I can tell you when reviewing the April dates, the one dates that all the board members were available were April 13th. I have received a set of dates from the union's attorney, and the union attorney included April 13th as a day that they were available. I have not heard from management's attorney as to their available dates, although Mr. Baird is sitting right next to me and hopefully can be able to talk to that issue. So essentially what I had before me was this March 9th date, which the union was opposed to, this March 20th date, which both the union and the management attorneys were comfortable with, but there was a Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council meeting that day, or an April 13th meeting in which it appears from the board's calendars that the board is available that date, and the union has said they're fine, but I haven't gotten final word from the management. It was just all a lot to think about, and I wanted to make sure I kept this board in just sort of involved in the discussion about the date setting, and therefore I presented to you wanted to present to you the option of, where the board wanted to go with the date. I can also say that what I also heard was an email from the management saying that they were opposed to or object to moving the item to April. So there was just a lot swirling around. I thought it was important to get the input from the full board before a date was set. And my goal today was to get a date set. And with that, those are the dates that I've got in mind and for us to talk about. Obviously, the county administrators here. Obviously, I see folks from the union here. I do not see attorneys for either side, but certainly would welcome comments from the public and comments from this board.
Commissioners, any questions?
Just one, if the administrator knows if the April 13th works with
I'm getting every indication right now that it works for our team.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how Commissioner Slurry feels, but I would like to get this resolved sooner. And my reasoning there is one of the issues we're debating is when any potential pay increases go in effect. And the magistrate has ruled upon ratification, which means every day that goes by is another day those men and women don't get any compensation. And I want to get them that as soon as we can. The union has proposed a rollback date, basically when it'll be effective sometime back in the past. And I guess just looking at this issue, however it comes out, the question asked is, well, what if you're wrong? So if my position is upon ratification and I'm wrong and it goes to rollback, no harm done. The union's position is go to rollback, and if they lose so that they're wrong, then those members have been hurt every day that we delay. And I don't, I want to get them that money. They deserve it. They've earned it. And I want to get it to them as soon as they can. So I would be more than willing to forego the Regional Planning Council meeting and have the impasse hearing on March 20th.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we all know what a great sacrifice it would be to miss the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, but I believe that this issue is pressing, and I actually agree with Commissioner O'Brien's reasoning for this. So I also believe it's more appropriate to do this sooner rather than later. So I will stand up and make that sacrifice of missing that Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council meeting so I can be here on March 20th.
You champion you.
Yes, and I'll take that as a second to Commissioner O'Brien's motion to move forward with March 20th.
Very well. We've got a motion on the floor and a second to move forward with the the date of March the 20th. We don't have a time on that specifically.
We will work with the parties. It would start in the morning.
Okay, all right. And so is there anybody from the public that wishes to address this issue or say anything?
9 o'clock work?
9 o'clock works great.
Yeah, 9's fine with me.
I don't know who else may be attending. There's a event at 8 o'clock that morning that goes till 9, and just to get a few minutes of travel, either say 9:15 or 9:30, if that's not too big of a... The
9:30 is fine.
What's the...
Which event is
that? Yeah,
you didn't get invited.
I guess not. Story of my life. Okay.
Like a personal event now.
9:30 it is. Okay. And,
obviously, there's no charity auction involved.
Exactly. Okay. Any questions or comments from anybody from the public or the union? Gentlemen, anything? Okay. All those in favor of the Friday the 20th of March signify with aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. It will be the 20th of March.
Okay. Thank you very much, Board, for your assistance on that matter.
Thank you.
Okay. And I will email both attorneys when I get out of here.
All right. All right. Now, that does move us to commissioner items. We have Commissioner Solari.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a motion for a rail safety expert and a traffic study today, but I'd like to put them in context. Reading the Wall Street Journal this morning, one section had a story about a derailed train had crude oil with a high level of gas. In just the first paragraph, the crude oil aboard the train that derailed and exploded 2 weeks ago in West Virginia contained so much combustible gas that it would have been barred from rail transport under the safety regulations that go into effect next month. And from another section of the Wall Street Journal this morning, the head of the article is, "Hospitals shorten the time from stroke to treatment." And just the first paragraph, "After a stroke, timing is everything in the race to save the brain, yet many patients aren't diagnosed and treated quickly enough to prevent permanent disability from the death." So clearly, time is lives when we're talking about getting people in need to the proper medical care. So my motion is to hire probably actually 2 experts, one a rail safety expert, and ask them to look at rail deaths and accidents over the past 20 years along the FECI East Coast line from Miami to Jacksonville, and also to extrapolate based on their experience additional deaths and accidents that might be expected with the 32 high-speed rail trains and additional freight trains each day, and also specific safety problems that we can expect from operating freight and high-speed rail on the same tracks. And I think that's warranted because almost nowhere where there's high-speed rail do they run the high-speed rail on the same tracks as freight trains. And we've seen, if you followed the Wall Street Journal over the last 3 or 4 months, that freight trains seem to be regularly disrailing in different communities. And then the health and safety issues caused by the delays in getting emergency patients to hospitals. And as backup, I have a February 14th letter from Jeff Susie, the president of the Indian River Medical Center, and that letter, to some extent, notes the medical problems that any delays can cause, and analyze the impact of AEF and additional freight traffic on schools and school bus traffic. The 6th item is, I think, would have to probably be done by a different consultant, and that is to have a traffic study to examine the impact of all aboard Florida and the substantially longer freight trains that we'll have coming on select railroad crossings. And I'd suggest that this may require the different consultant from the rail safety expert, but also in the sort of feeling of cooperation with our other counties, I would like us to probably examine 2 or 3 crossings in Indian River County and perhaps one in Martin and St. Lucie, if these counties are receptive to the idea, so we can get a broad feeling across the Treasure Coast. And as you think about this one on the crossings, I'd like you to think not so much about the cars stacked east and west, but this rail runs parallel to US 1, and so think what happens, say, on Oslo Road when the crossing goes down. There's not that much space between Oslo and US 1, and with certainly a long freight train, you'll soon have cars starting to stack up on Oslo Road. And that's the type of thing which can cause, I think, not only significant traffic concerns, but significant safety concerns down the line. So I put that in the form of a motion with a suggestion that this would cost under $35,000 for the rail safety expert and probably a lot less for the traffic study.
Second with discussion.
We've got a motion from Commissioner Solari with a second from Commissioner Flesher for discussion. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Commissioner Solari, I don't know if did you give it any thought as to the selection process, realizing that a rail safety expert is probably a extremely highly limited availability as far as how we would go about it?
And actually, yes, after our meeting on the 17th, the next morning there was something at the Lyric Theater about All Aboard Florida, and after that I went out to breakfast with Kate Kottner from our legal department, with Steve Ryan, who's the attorney that was hired by the Martin County Care Group, and we discussed this there, and he said he would have some suggestions for us if we move forward for a rail safety expert. So that's probably one of the first phone calls I'd suggest Dylan make if we move forward with this.
And do you believe that $35,000 is a conservative approach?
I believe it'll be less than the $35,000, yes, from the discussions. But again, I'm no rail safety expert, but I believe that would be the case.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody from the public wish to address this issue? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us to the Coastal Community Caucus. Commissioner Zort.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few weeks ago, I attended the annual beach conference. Myself and Administrator Barrett attended a Friday morning talk with Congressman Jolly, who represents the Hillsborough, Pinellas type of region. And during his talk, he mentioned for each of us that have contacts with our local congressmen to encourage them to join on to the Coastal Communities Caucus. And what Congressman Jolly is trying to do is to help build a coalition of coastal communities around the United States, not just Florida communities. Obviously, some of his early sponsors are from Florida, but he's also looking at basically going up the east and west coast of the U.S. to look at making sure that these members of Congress have a keen understanding of the importance of beach issues. So what we would look at is having a letter drafted, signed by the chairman, encouraging our local congressional representative, Congressman Posey, to look at joining the Coastal Communities Caucus in Washington, D.C. There is some suggested language, I think, that has come out from a press release from Congressman Jolly, and we can use that as a template for the letter to Congressman Posey.
I don't know a thing about the Coastal Community Caucus, so I don't know. I'm not ready to take action on it today. I'm not saying it's a good thing or bad thing. I just don't know. I don't know Mr. Jolly. I don't know his ideology or anything about it. And I have found I have been burnt before by asking to vote for things that I really haven't been brought up to speed on. So
I'll ask you, since the administrator was there anything else that I had left out?
I think what he said he wanted the federal government start looking at it as an infrastructure to help against storms, as well as and expand so there'd be more money available from the federal level. It's obviously pro beach renourishment. He thinks that we should have. He thinks that we could have them look not only look at it as an important part of infrastructure because of all the the FEMA claims and how it could be funded. It was very extensive, and it was all positive towards beach communities.
Okay.
So could we ask the county administrator just to get a copy of whatever the Jolly's report is and a copy of that letter and just bring it back to us?
Yes, and in addition to that, if we could, kind of in advance of that, I'd like for somebody to reach out to Congressman Posey's office and just to get his feedback on it. I feel very uncomfortable with passing a resolution of some kind if our representative very well may be adamantly opposed to it.
That's a very good point.
Good point.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
and I support what you're stating. I think that it might be premature. There was no backup, and so I was compelled. I discussed it with our general counsel as well as did some research last night. trying to gain a little more grasp of what this caucus is all about. And I will say that what I got out of it is that it is all things inclusive, as Joe Baird is stating, that there are many indigenous and specific interests that apply to coastal communities, and that's what the caucus will focus on as far as the needs of our shorefront communities. And they base from, I know that there was articles from a representative from New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and that was discussing it, and it appears that there are several representatives that are taking claim for initiating this or catapulting this into an event. So I did want a little more time to look at it, because there are many different avenues and statements that have been made, and it's all available on the internet.
And I do see, we all know we
on
have...
the internet, it's right.
It's got to be true, sure. I saw Bigfoot being carried off the other day.
It was blurry.
You saw it too?
Yeah.
Was he with his kids?
I really do see this whole FEMA flood issue, the flood maps as well as the flood insurance. It is going to be a big issue. So I see some merit in it, but I'm just a little bit hesitant at this point to urge our congressman to do something that I'm not aware of.
It did pass through Beach and Shores Committee. Mark Tripsom was also at the conference and attended the breakfast with Congressman Jolly, and they had asked that a letter move forward. They could obviously, I guess, do a letter amongst themselves, but I think we'll do this extra groundwork, see where Congressman Posey sits on it. We can talk with David. I think he'll be here on Thursday, and just see what he thinks about it, and then from there we can look at bringing it back again.
That sounds good. It would really mean a lot to me to be able to hear from our representative about what his flavor of the caucus would be.
Okay.
So, any other discussion, commissioners? Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes commissioners' items and moves us into special districts and boards. We have the Solid Waste Disposal District. This is the Site Redevelopment Assessment Report Summary and request for redevelopment direction for the former South Gifford Road landfill site. What's that?
I'm sorry. We missed 14A1.
Missed your item, sir.
Really, was it important?
Oh, yeah, shoot, you're right. This is pretty much milk toast. This just gets us in started with the St. John's as far as their the funding cycle for the well plugging, and
Mr. Chairman, it'd be my honor to move your item.
Thank you. I'll second it. Got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien to move the 14A1, which is the abandoned artesian well plugging, and I've seconded that. Is there any further discussion?
Just one, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Commissioner.
And I think that's a great program. Like to see it be come back online again. Just one question on: has anybody ever come up with another method for plugging a well that might drive the cost down, so we could plug more wells with the same? I know they're kind of using I don't want to say a 50-year-old method for plugging wells, but it's like if somebody came up with a better concept to plug a well at a lower cost, we could eliminate more of these, as well as the district could as well. But it might be something at some point to pitch to the engineering guys at University of Florida or the IFAS folks and say, hey, how can we do this better and less costly so we can stretch the dollars further?
I'd just send it to our middle school science fair projects.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Seeing that firsthand.
Yeah, they are quite some smart. Hard to judge them because they're over your head sometimes.
Well, that's why they give you the sixth graders. So, but yeah, absolutely. Interestingly enough, about the appropriateness too they talked about the amount of salt water in our relief canals. Today, that's probably where a lot of this is coming from the wells that were put in place back in the early 30s that are still tapping into the aquifer that is getting more and more saltwater intrusion. So I don't have the answer to your question, but I do agree it is a good question that one of these days somebody should build a better well plugging facility in the world to beat a path to your door. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor with aye?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, nay? Motion passes unanimously. All right, now that does move us to the Site Redevelopment Assessment Report Summary and request for redevelopment direction for the former South Gifford Road landfill site. I see we have Vinny Machu et al. This is found memorandum dated February 20th, 2015, found on pages 316 through 326 in your backup. Welcome, Vinny.
All right, thank you again, Commissioner. For the record, I'm Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. To my left is Jill Johnson. She is with Geosyntec. And to my right is Himanshu Mehta, the Managing Director of Solid Waste and Disposal District. What we have before you is an update to the South Gifford Road landfill. Back in December 3rd of 2013, staff worked with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and received board approval to allow the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council access to the old Gifford Road landfill. If you recall, the Treasure Coast Regional Council was able to solicit some brownfield grants money to be able to be used to the first phase, if you will, for about $70,000 of the 55 acres that the county owns. Again, there's 115 acres. The county owns about 55 acres of that, and the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council had about $70,000 to investigate the first 30 acres. We came back to the board after Geosyntec did the initial investigations in March. We had a July 7th meeting with the folks from the Gifford Progressive Civic League. We then got board approval to update that information, put the report on the Gifford Neighborhood Plan site with community development so that anybody and all stakeholders could get access to that information. And then we came back, staff came back to the board on August 16th of 2014. The board at that time made another investment for the remaining 25 acres for about $81,000 to investigate the southern portion of the county site. So what we have today is the north and the southern sections commingled together for the total 55 acres to look at two things. What's going on with the surface of the area to investigate what is or is not present that may or may not have health and human concerns, and is there enough soil cover to make sure that the waste is not being exposed? So Jill Johnson has traveled down to be able to present some information last night to the Gifford Progressive Civic League with a toxicologist, Chris, who was on hand to answer some questions. We wanted to let you know that that meeting went well. There were some good questions asked by some of the residents, especially in regards to whether or not there's going to be some landfill gas subjected to some of the folks in the surrounding community. And Jill can go into some of the detail as to what was or was not found in that area. Again, if you recall, when Ms. McKenzie was here, there were two sites of concern. We did additional investigations into those sites to see if there was more issues in regards to some of the elevated concerns. So we have information with respect to those additional sites, the remaining portion of the 25 acres. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jill Johnson with Geosyntec to go over her report. Thank you.
Thank you for your time this morning. Well, this afternoon now.
Wesley.
You've seen, we've used this slide to, just kind of remind, give us a reminder every time we kind of give you an update on what we've been doing out at this site. And so I've updated just to show that in 2014 we did complete what I'm calling the first phase of the redevelopment assessment that the Regional Planning Council paid for, and then earlier this year we completed the second phase that the county funded. So under the Regional Planning Council money, we compiled a report which went to the EPA. The report that we're completing now and that will be uploaded to that same site, right, the neighborhood site, is really a compilation of the whole thing. So everything will be in the same place, all the information, all the data, so that you and the community can access it all in one place. So the focus, the overall assessment that we've completed at the site was really focused on understanding the site conditions so that we make sure that any redevelopment that we might do at the site, that you might choose to do, is done in a way that's safe for everybody, safe for the community and safe for the people that are going to be using the site. And I just wanted to point out, because it does come up usually when we're talking about the site, that the work we're doing now is a completely separate thing than the groundwater, the ongoing groundwater remediation and the monitoring that we've been doing at the site, which is state-driven and regulatorily required. Whereas the work we're doing now is a voluntary effort by the county to really look to try to decide if this is a piece of property that we can use for the community in the betterment of, instead of, right now it's just, wow. There's a lot of really great options for this piece of property where it is. So on the right is the front of this 2-page. We put together just kind of like this flyer, this summary so as you're talking to people or if you have some questions, I tried to put it all in one place so that you can hand this out. We did hand it out at the meeting last night, and I believe it was attached to your agenda item as well. But as I said, so at this point, now that we've done the 2 phases of work, we've looked at the entire 55 acres. We did kind of grid it off the site. We've collected 90 soil samples, really focusing on that shallow soil, which is where, anybody using the site would have contact with. We're analyzing those soil samples for a broad list of, to look at just anything that could be possibly there. We also looked at some test pits to make sure that there was enough soil there to keep the waste covered, so that it's not in a place where we can get to it, or anybody walking around the site might get to the waste. And then we also looked at landfill gas at 13 locations across the whole 55 acres. Here on the right, that's just the back of the same flyer. And I think at the bottom line, and we put this at the bottom line, at the bottom of this first page here, the bottom line is that everything we've looked at and all the data we've collected tells us that the site is a good option for use and can be safely redeveloped into a recreational community use. The site conditions are typical of, it's an old landfill. The site conditions that we see, obviously there's waste under the ground. There is some landfill gas there. But everything that we found can be addressed and planned for in any engineering and planning that could be done if you decide to redevelop the site. So there's just a lot of words here, and I just want to touch on, here's the 3 things that we looked at: the soils, the soil cover over the waste, and the landfill gas. In terms of the soil, there's only 2 chemicals that we found in soil at 3 locations around the entire 55 acres. The concentrations that we found were above the state screening levels, but they're consistent with urban sort of background levels that we see, all across Florida. And just depending on what we decide to do with the property, eventually, what we do with those areas could vary. You can remove them, we could cover them with a parking lot. So at this point, we've just sort of concluded that we know what's going on. We'll reevaluate when we kind of move through this process a little bit further.
What 2 chemicals were they?
Arsenic, and it's called, it's a polyaromatic hydrocarbon. It's a semi-volatile compound that is made from, it's like a byproduct of your fuel exhaust and we see it everywhere. Parking lots, a runoff from asphalt creates it. But again, in both cases, they're above the residential, which is a very conservative. We're looking at the most conservative screening levels at this point, just as the safety. Let's look at the most conservative safety measures at this point. And then we're eventually would like to talk about all the results with DEP and kind of get their guidance on what kind of levels we should be using to gauge these results. Okay. So most of the site actually does have 2 feet of cover over the waste, which is what the requirements are. There's a couple of small areas, and any future redevelopment will require that landfill, that the cover is protective of human health, which is what we all want, but this could be several options. It could be 2 feet of soil. It can also be an alternative cover system, and this is another thing that, depending on what the site redevelopment and use is decided on, it can be one of many things. And again, we can talk to DEP about that to make sure they're on board. There is methane and carbon dioxide, which is the landfill gas composition that we see at most old landfills that has this type of waste in it. And again, it's not a current health concern. This is something that we're measuring in the subsurface. So as soon as this gas reaches the air, it dissipates and decomposes and it goes away. The only time that this would become something that we need to make sure that we're careful about is if we design any sort of closed structure for this site, because that gives it a place to kind of collect. But there's a lot of engineering mitigation methods that can be included in the design. Now that we know what we're dealing with, we can address that at the beginning. But I wanted to point out here, it's not a health concern now that there's no closed structures on the site. And if you decide to redevelop the site in a way that there are no closed structures, in the end, it will continue not to be a concern. But yeah, and then I mentioned just, that there are very, simple engineering controls that can be put in place for the site design. This is just a picture I just wanted to show you, 'cause this is an overview of all the sample locations that we did at the site. And I wanted to point out that DEP has a guidance manual for redeveloping old landfills. I mean, this exact same thing. I mean, they like to see us reuse this land, especially for, improving kind of local communities. And their preferred method is a recreational use. It's really a great way to reuse this type of property. And again, I mean, they've seen over 50 successful former landfills redeveloped in this type of way. And so I really want to point out, and I want us to remember that, we're not reinventing the wheel. It's something that's done, and we're trying to make sure we talk to the community and give updates to the Progressive League, and make sure everybody understands and has a chance to ask their questions. But it's a really great piece of property that some great things can be done with. With
the pictures that are there, I'm assuming that
those are just examples. Yeah.
Okay, not one was the other or the other was the okay.
No, no. There's several parks. There's a lot of parks actually throughout Florida that are old landfills. A lot of they make a lot of golf courses. There's one in South Florida somewhere that's got it's supposed to be a really great one because it's got so much elevation change because of the waste. So then I was just going to turn it back over to Vinny and talk about kind of the next steps.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. Good presentation. One was we still need to get community input. It shouldn't be looked at as an Indian River County-driven process. We're just a partner with the community. So to that effect, we wanted to reach out to the community leaders last night. We talked to some of the folks from the Gifford Progressive League. They asked some great questions, but still I think there's some unanswered questions. Jill refers to 6.2, but there includes the next part of that is before beginning one of these projects, the owner must develop construction plans and a detailed description of the project and present these for review to the department's district office. What we would like to do is to ask for board approval for item number 2, which is to meet with DEP and perhaps the Treasure Coast Regional Plancil Council now up front to get their ideas, to get some guidance on how best to try to move this process forward without really knowing what it is that we're actually going to be doing, to be able to make sure that we have enough safeguards, that we've looked at all the information after spending some of the money with the Treasure Coast Regional and after the county has invested some money, to be able to get that outline, that roadmap, to then perhaps even look at maybe doing options number 3 and 4 and 5 down the road. But certainly this is a process. This has to occur after many years. We don't have any estimated costs right now as to what this could possibly be. We certainly have some options. Recreational, I think, was probably the best use at the lowest cost with some of the concerns that were talked about with the landfill gas. But again, we're asking for some direction from the board today for some or all of some of the items here, not to say that these are the only ones, but certainly to continue to get community input, to ask for the board's allowance for us to put that online under the Gifford Neighborhood Plan, under the community development, so that they have the full, complete 55-acre report that they can take a look at, and then to direct staff to meet with the DEP to get some further guidance as to perhaps the next steps along this process.
Just real quick before we leave the slide, the 55 acres that we have there, and then as you go further to the south, that goes directly into the airport property?
Yes.
Okay. And is that airport property, is there anything, and I guess really what I'm trying to do is to think, okay, who else, is there another municipality other than the airport that may have some property there they may want to incorporate into this? And more work as a I don't know, a municipality effort. They're probably, I'm thinking, to the east. I don't know. I can't think of it right now or around it. But
yeah, I think you can't see it on here, but yeah, to the east, all the airport properties to the south. It also they own some of the city owns some of the property over there to the east as well.
Right, that's their shooting range, right?
Yes.
How about if we ask Vincent or Hamashu to just touch base with the city of Vero Beach, let them know what we're doing, and see if there's anything that they'd like to do in conjunction with it in terms of them doing their assessment or trying, or just to keep those.
Yeah, and specifically ask the questions as does the wooded area, does it have to be, do they want to keep it fenced off? Is it something that we could utilize as an expansion of the park, that since we're already going to be putting one in that general area? And is there any, do we have to worry about whether or not it stays in any environmental significance with the airport, restrictions of any kind. I don't know. I don't have the answer for it. But if we're doing 55 acres here, I don't know what the size of our South County facility is. But, I mean, this is right just about in the center part of the county where I would say recreation facilities would, in the future, are going to be sorely needed.
But I'd also, I think we can go ahead probably with 1 and 2, but I think we ought to, given that some of the land is used by Public Works and some of the land is used by utilities, is perhaps suggest that the county administrator get together with those departments to assess what their long-range needs are, so we don't squeeze them out and require them to purchase property somewhere else before we know that. When we began this process, we were initially talking about using some portion of it for ball fields and stuff. So I don't want us to, run ahead of things. Mm-hmm. And also, my sense is that from listening to people in the Gifford community, that we still have some time to go before we put them at ease about the condition of the property. And I don't think this was a priority in the Gifford neighborhood plan, so that just suggests to me that we have some time to move forward in a methodical manner. But I think we really need to know how much of that land Public Works is going to need to put their old bones, and how much land the utilities is going to need, especially in light of the changes that are going through this solid waste disposal district.
Okay.
So I'll put that in the form of a motion for get the community input, continue to get the community input, which you've been doing. You've been doing a good job in that. Continue that. Authorize staff to meet with the FDEP and the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. But probably a step before that is to get with the county administrator and just sort out the long-term needs for the utilities department, particularly the solid waste disposal district, and the Public Works department, and to touch base with the city of Vero Beach, let them know what we're doing and seeing if there's any way that we can cooperate further with.
Specifically, and when you say the city of Vero Beach, I know that the airport authority or airport is, but this is airport property, so I'd like to know what can be done with that property that the airport has there.
Commissioner Himanshu, for the record. Briefly, Eric Menger was here this morning, so I did talk to him. He mentioned the airport is going through a master plan process right now, so the timing of sort of discussions about their involvement and the 60 acres that is south of this. He said it was perfect timing, so we're going to follow up with him and share the information that we've uncovered here. But given what we found here, we expect probably similar conditions on the southern half as well to ultimately indicate that it is a usable site for recreational use.
Well, and I guess really, if the airport has the ability, I don't know that they do, but if they could also be allowed to use this as their some of their industrial zoning too, I think. I don't know, but if it is, I would like for our plan of recreation to enhance what they may want to do there, because I see that whole area around the airport starting to get. You can see the life coming back into it from the recession.
Sure.
And they very well may want to expand that footprint to the east or west side of 43rd Avenue.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second Commissioner Slurry's motion as long as you don't ask him to repeat it.
Don't worry. Don't worry. Is there any further discussion or any input from the public? Any questions or comments? I'm assuming you all are finished. Okay. All right. If there's...
Mr. Chairman, I was just looking to see, I have from the Airport Commission meeting on Thursday, I think they identified that piece of land and just see if they have a comment on what
the future land use will be.
Yeah, let me see.
And they may be revising the future land use.
I know here.
That's a part of what they did. So that falls into their. They're just calling it now Airport North and West Sector 5 and 6 for strategic land use cores of what to do with them. So
yeah, so that very well may be a good opportunity for them to do something with that property to help enhance the tax base, and of course us use the landfill for.
And that the old Dodger Pines property has a development coming with like 700 homes or something.
Yeah.
So some
Sure.
recreation there might be a good thing.
Excellent. Okay, we've got a motion on the floor to move forward with the report. I won't even ask to repeat it. Y'all are clear on it?
I could if you want.
No, thanks. No. If there's no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That moves us to the Solid Waste and Recyclables Collection Services RFP 2015-023, timeline update and request for public workshop, memorandum dated February 20th, 2015, and this is found on pages 327 through 328 in your backup. Mr. Burke, welcome.
Thank you again, Chairman. For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We have some interested parties in the audience that have been waiting a long time. What we'd like to do is to ask for the board's consideration for a couple dates. Just a brief history. As you know, our franchise agreements expire September 30th, 2015, and to that effect, for the first time ever, Indian River County has chosen to go out for an RFP to solicit qualified vendors to be able to submit pricing. So, back on December 16th of 2014, the SWID Board approved the issuance of the Solid Waste and Recyclables Collection Services RFP number 2015-023. The RFP was published on January 6th. A mandatory pre-bid meeting was held over in Building B on January 21st, 2015, and the bid opening was held on February 20th. 4 bidders submitted bids to the Solid Waste and Disposal District. You have a selection committee that was made up of Himanshi Mehta, Mr. Jason Brown, and myself, in which we were looking at, on page 328, at the top of your agenda, the first 3 items: qualifications and references, the technical proposal, and the participation growth strategy. So without taking into account any of the financial aspect of that, the selection committee was asked to rank each and all the firms that had submitted qualified bids. The financial proposal was analyzed and looked at by Kessler Consulting and also with our purchasing department, with the purchasing department doing the vetting and the final analysis, so that the 2 numbers were then combined for an overall score close to 100. What we have today is a board consideration that we perhaps have 2 meetings in light of the fact of what happened with some of the folks for the Winter Beach issue, where some folks maybe had not known about some of the decisions that were made in the master plan RFP. Because this is such a truly important process and project for the county, we feel that there should be a 2-pronged effort in order to, 1, bring information to the SWID board for review, but no voting on that particular day. The first would be held potentially on Tuesday, the 17th of March. So that's recommendation number 1, is to have a presentation only with some of the backup and all the information that has been delivered to date to present it to the SWID board on Tuesday, March 17th. No voting would happen at that day because there's a lot of different things and a lot of different factors that have to be analyzed. And then we would come back at a second date, and that's really what we need to determine, that second date, when that should be. We have 3 options. The first is the very next day on Wednesday, March 18th. The second would be the following week, Tuesday, March 24th, but to be held at a time certain at 3 o'clock p.m. in the afternoon, or perhaps on Wednesday, March 25th at 9 o'clock in the morning. The third and final authorization that staff is looking for is the approval to hand out these little cards, decision time. We'd like to work with our haulers to get that information out to some of the interested stakeholders, to be able to perhaps put it on the garbage bins or the recycle bins, to hand it out at the customer convenience centers, and to perhaps maybe get the word out on radio shows or through local media to be able to make sure that folks who are interested in this process have a say. And that's where some comments would perhaps come in front of the board before the board would ultimately make a decision based upon staff's input, based upon all the information that has been presented. So that's the third, is just a small little decision time where, again, we don't yet have a date on this piece of paper. It's up to the board's discretion after some discussion and a time to be determined. Certainly, we're available for any questions and comments. And again, there's some interested stakeholders here who'd like to know when that is going to be as well, so that we can make sure that they're here during this process.
Well, I'll just make just a few comments, Vinny. Just understand that as we go through this, at the end of it, if as one commissioner, if I don't like it, I'm not going to vote for it. So I don't want anybody to have their feelings hurt, okay, in this process. And so, with that, I think that I'll reach out to I'm going to say the Winter Beach contingent. I think y'all will remember who I'm talking about, and let them know what's going on, because this is aggressive. But then again, I think we've found that really people really don't get concerned about the garbage until you start making decisions that affect them, and we don't start making decisions that affect them normally until after a vote, and then that's whenever, well, what happens. So, just as an aside.
And Commissioners, just to point out, we reached out to both haulers, and they're both in agreement to participate and help us pass these out. Both the convenience centers and also through the hauling routes, if you will, to put them in, we'll get the cards made and they can pass them out with the recycling routes, for example. That way we try to reach as many people as we can.
And Vinny, if you'll create something like this that's digital, with the emails that we got the last time, I'm pretty sure that I have a Winter Beach Customer Convenience Center file in my Outlook.
Just your relatives? No.
Yeah, most of them, yes.
That's a few hundred.
Yeah, so.
I was just going to ask if this is Commissioner Zork's phone number on there.
I was just going to recommend you include it.
I got to get that sign out that had your guys.
Yeah.
What was the 2 dates again that were?
So again, the first was to come to the board on March 17th. That's for the initial information to go over all of the options, but not to have a vote. Okay. And then we had 3 proposed dates, which is recommendation number 2 on page 328. The first being Wednesday, March 18th, the very next day. The second being Tuesday, March 24th at 3 o'clock p.m. Or the third being Wednesday, March 25th at 9 o'clock a.m. Again, part of the reason for this is that we have 30 days in which to be able to have the bids looked at and analyzed. After the 30 days, any and all information is subject to the Sunshine Law, and so we're trying to work within the constraints of the 30 days to bring this information to the board. But obviously, we can certainly do it in April. We're flexible, but we want to try to have the information presented to the board, number one, and secondarily, a decision made, hopefully in March. The reason being is, depending on what options are looked at, there's a lot of time that is needed depending on the carts and the procurement process and some of the education that needs to go out as far as if we decide dual stream or single stream. So there's a lot of background that needs to happen to make sure that whatever is decided is done in a seamless transaction. So that's why we're trying to make sure that we're a little bit aggressive on getting this to the board, but also then making a decision, I think, hopefully in the month of March. And I'm sure some of the haulers would like to know as well what the outcome could be. So again, we just need to have some direction on the 3 dates.
Commissioner Fletcher?
I realize that the second 2 dates in March might be cumbersome by some of us who have some obligations. I know I do. So I'd like to make a motion to accept item number 1, the staff's recommendation for the approval of the RFP summary presentation on the 17th. And I don't know if you want these separately or continue on.
Let's take them separately, I think.
Yeah, let's go ahead and
separately.
I'll second that.
Got a motion for item number 1 for the RFP approval on Tuesday, March 17th, and the second. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to address just the issue of the RFP presentation with no vote on Tuesday, the 17th? Motion from Commissioner Fletcher with a second from Commissioner Solari. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next.
Mr. Chairman, looking at the dates, and I guess maybe sooner better than later, I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with a presentation, special call meeting for Wednesday, March 18th, 2015 at 9 a.m.
All right. We've got a motion to move forward with the approval for a special call meeting on Wednesday, March 18th at 9 a.m. with a vote after obtaining public input. And I've got a second from Commissioner O'Brien.
Discussion.
Yes, Commissioner Solari.
I'm just wondering if that's time enough for the public. I mean, we're discussing it for the first time on the 17th. It's very, very complicated. I think, I'm guessing there'll be a lot of calls to the utilities department about it, and I just wonder if that gives the public enough time to actually digest any of it.
I agree with that, Mr. Chairman, and it was only moved in the spirit of the fact that March 24th and March 25th are not good dates.
No.
So for many of us here, so if that's the case in that spirit, we would have to move it beyond that point and it would be in April, and there was some concern by staff that we would have the public announcement as well.
It's certainly not out of the realm of possibilities. I don't know if the 31st works for any of the board members
The
here.
problem
I
with
know
that
we
is
don't have
that's spring break for the public school system.
Right.
And
you may not get the participation that you anticipate.
Yeah.
But they can all bring their kids here to discuss it. I mean, that'd be good.
Spoken like somebody doesn't have kids in the public school system.
You see, they go to school and then they want to break. We're not a break.
My feeling on this is that probably at the end of the day, that I don't think there's ever going to be enough time to discuss it. But Commissioner Solari, I do understand where you're coming from.
I do, too.
But we have a motion on the floor. Did that get a second?
I second it.
Okay, Commissioner. So we have
just one other question.
Yes.
The other commissioners just can't make it because they're going to like Tallahassee or something that day? Okay, I mean, I just wanted to bring it up.
I see what you're saying.
You know, I'm
just that's the
It's not a matter of
yeah. I mean, I'm
somebody not wanting to have a meeting at
I mean, I'm
that time.
you know,
Yes.
so I'm going to end up supporting the motion just because, but recognizing that we're between a rock and a hard place, kind of, with the timing of the utility department, but still don't know if the public has enough time.
Okay.
And I'm just waiting for Commissioner Solari to comment that the Tuesday, March 24th at 3 o'clock, we would still be in our regular meeting with the
well, I didn't
racial gavel that we're working under.
Glacial gavel.
You know, if we could have gotten out of that meeting by noon, we could each start at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, that would work, but I'm not thinking.
I'll try to tighten it up, Commissioner.
I wouldn't schedule anything.
Well, it should be limited because there may be a shortage of commissioners for that meeting.
Yeah, yes.
We anticipate the possibility.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to move forward with this on the Wednesday, March 18th at 9 a.m. with a special call meeting. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Mr. Chairman?
Was that a yes or no?
That was a yes for me. But I
Okay.
have a question.
And the motion passes unanimously. Yes, Commissioner Solari.
Vinny, on your notice, instead of the recycling guy, you want to put 75 and 5? I just think if you're going to build a brand, that this is an opportunity for it.
Or maybe on the back, just a little bit larger, perhaps.
That'd be great, too, if you can do that. Nice.
Okay.
Okay. Now we have item number 3.
Mr. Chairman, move staff recommendation for distribution as agreed with our current haulers.
Got a motion to authorization to pass out the decision time information cards to subscribers at all of the customer convenience centers, as well as press releases inviting the public to participate in the public workshop process. Got a motion from Commissioner Flesher with a second from Commissioner O'Brien. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Commissioner
Do you
Zorn.
want to put the website to your department below the phone number so people have that?
Yeah, with as much information as possible.
Okay.
As well as a conspicuous display on our website. Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Anybody from the public wish to address this issue? Yes. This is your last one.
If the
limited.
If the two haulers are willing to help carry this message, is that through their billing cycle, or through a special mail, or through? Is there? If not, if it's on their billing cycle, is the billing cycle going to get out with this in it before the meeting dates, or you don't want it to show up after, because that would really upset people?
Commissioner, no, we're going to do them like we do when we have special pickups after holidays. What we do is we'll get the cards printed right away, get them to the haulers, and as early as next week, recycling routes. We can get the cards printed this week, and they can start passing them out on their recycling route. So when they're picking up the recycling, they'll put the card in the bin. Because trying to do a mail out to try to get everybody, it's going to be too late to do that by mail out. So
it'll be a thicker card stock.
It'd be thicker card stock.
Thanks.
Okay.
Quality.
Any further discussion? Anybody from the public wish to address the issue? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
I was going to ask.
I was going to stop you anyhow. Motion passes unanimously. And Commissioners, if there are no further business to be... Yes. Oh, you know what? If I could, thank you very much. Yes, we had the city Sebastian's former attorney had passed away, and if I meant to do this at the beginning of the meeting, but I think that there's still a proper time to just pay due respect to Richard Stringer, city attorney Sebastian former, that passed away. If I could just get just a brief moment of silence. Thank you very much. At this time, if there's no further business to be transacted at this time, I now declare this meeting adjourned.